Drinking urine to stay hydrated. All right, let's start with one of the most famous and most disgusting survival myths out there. Drinking your own pee. Yeah, I know. Gross. But some people actually think it's a solid backup plan when you're dying of thirst. You've seen it on survival shows, you've heard it passed around in what-if conversations, and in a desperate moment, it can sound like a weird kind of genius. You're in the desert, right? No water, no shade, lips cracked, heat baking you from every direction. And suddenly you remember, wait a second, I still have pee. Like it's some kind of built-in canteen your body kindly stored for emergencies. But hold on. Before you unzip and go full Bear Grylls, let's slow down and talk about what's really going on. Here's the myth. Urine is sterile and mostly water, so if you're dying of thirst, it's better than nothing. It sounds logical. Your body made it, and it's liquid. And in survival situations, you're supposed to use everything you've got, right? But here's the thing. Urine is waste. That's literally its whole job. Your kidneys work hard filtering out all the stuff your body doesn't want. Salts, toxins, nitrogen byproducts, urea, ammonia, you name it. Then they wrap it all up in a little yellow goodbye package and flush it out. So when you drink urine, you're basically taking your body's garbage and forcing it right back in. Now, technically, your first pee of the day in a well-hydrated body is mostly water. But survival isn't about technicalities. It's about what keeps you alive longer. And in a survival scenario, where you're already dehydrated and your urine's turning darker yellow, that stuff is not safe anymore. It's way too concentrated. The salt and waste levels are way too high. So what actually happens if you start drinking your own pee in a survival situation? First, you feel like a champ. I'm doing it. I'm surviving. I'm drinking my own pee like a pro. But soon, your kidneys, already working overtime to stay balanced, get overwhelmed. You're giving them more waste to filter without giving them any clean water to work with. It's like trying to wash dishes using only dirty mop water. Eventually, things break down. Your body gets more dehydrated. Your urine gets even more concentrated. If you keep drinking it, you create a vicious cycle. Each round is worse than the last. Your blood thickens, your organs strain, and boom. Now you're not just thirsty, you're potentially in kidney failure. It's a slow-motion crash. And look, even Bear Grylls, who made this myth popular, later admitted the drinking urine is a last resort move and only done under very specific, controlled conditions, like squeezing it through cloth or distilling the steam. But the average person isn't MacGyvering a field-grade urine purifier out of socks in sunlight. You're just drinking warm body juice straight from the source and hoping for the best. Bad idea. Now, some people say, but animals do it. Dogs drink pee all the time. Yeah, and dogs also eat poop. That doesn't make it a survival tip. The difference is you're a human. Your digestive system isn't built for that level of waste recycling. And in a crisis, your system's already stressed. You don't want to give it more toxins to deal with. So what should you do instead? If you're stuck without water, your goal is to preserve what hydration you do have. That means don't eat unless you have water. Digestion uses up fluids. Stay in the shade. Limit sweating. Cover your skin. Protect from sunburn and water loss. Move at night. Rest during the heat of the day. Collect morning dew or rainwater. Even licking condensation off leaves is better than chugging pee. And if you're near the coast, you might be tempted to drink seawater instead. Same deal. Way too salty will just make you thirstier. But at least you weren't considering recycling yourself, so points for that. Here's the hard truth. If you're at the point where drinking your own urine sounds like a plan, your real problem is lack of preparation. Survival isn't about movie moments. It's about knowledge, smart choices, staying calm. So no matter how desperate it gets, unless you're MacGyver with a full chemistry set, please don't turn your body into a personal drink machine. It's not Gatorade. It's not filtered. It's not even slightly safe. And besides, if you ever do get rescued after drinking your own pee, guess what's going to happen? The rescuers are going to look at you, hand you a water bottle, and go, "Dude, you could have just waited another hour." Don't be that guy. Stay smart, stay dry, and for the love of your kidneys, keep your pee where it belongs.
Moss only grows on the north side of trees. Let's say you're lost in the woods. You've got no compass, no GPS, and your phone is basically just a shiny rock at this point. You stop, look around, and try to remember that one tip you heard somewhere, probably from your scout leader, your uncle, or a wilderness movie. Moss always grows on the north side of trees. Boom! You check the trees around you, spot the green fuzz, and proudly declare, "North is that way." You feel like a real-life explorer. Lewis and Clark who? But here's the problem. That Moss equals north rule is total nonsense in most real-world situations. It's one of those survival tips that sounds smart, feels useful, and is easy to remember, which is probably why it's been passed down like some ancient forest secret. The idea behind it is simple. In the northern hemisphere, the sun travels across the southern part of the sky, so the north side of trees gets less sunlight, making it cooler and damper, which moss supposedly loves. That explanation almost makes sense until you look around and realize that moss doesn't care about your sense of direction. It grows wherever it wants. Moss doesn't have a compass. It's not trying to help you navigate. What it does care about is moisture, shade, and surface texture. So yeah, it can grow on the north side of a tree, but it could also grow on the east side, west side, the ground, a rock, a log, or the back of your boot if it's damp enough. You ever walk through a damp forest in the Pacific Northwest? Moss is everywhere. It covers rocks, fences, even telephone poles. And guess what? It grows in every direction, not just north. That's because in shady, wet environments, the whole forest is basically one big moss party. There's no clear pattern to follow. Even in drier climates, moss still doesn't always stick to the north side. Sometimes a tree might be leaning, or there's a hill blocking sunlight on one side, or a stream nearby keeping the east side wet. Nature is messy. It doesn't care about neat little rules made up by people. But the worst part is, if you blindly trust this moss myth and start walking in the opposite direction, you might just get yourself more lost. That's the real danger. It gives people false confidence. You think you're following nature's GPS, when in reality, you're just following a moldy lie deeper into the woods. And once you're off course in unfamiliar terrain without real navigation tools, every decision gets riskier. You could end up walking in circles. You could walk away from help. You could walk into dangerous terrain thinking you're making progress. And look, I get it. The idea of using nature to find your way is super appealing. It feels primal and cool, like you're tapping into ancient survival instincts. But if you're not trained in land navigation, and if you don't know how to actually read the environment correctly, these shortcuts can mess you up fast. Now, if you're in a true survival situation and you're desperate to figure out which way is north, there are better tricks than just trusting moss. They're not perfect, but they're better than just guessing. Watch the sun. In the northern hemisphere, it generally rises in the east and sets in the west. At noon, it's roughly to the south. Use a stick and shadow method. You can actually create a crude compass with a stick and the sun. Takes a bit of patience, but it works. Look for landmarks, rivers, mountains, power lines, or even the direction of distant sounds can help you orient yourself if you remember where you came from. Or, and I cannot stress this enough, just stay put. If someone knows you're missing, it's way easier for rescuers to find a stationary person than someone randomly wandering based on moss patterns. And hey, moss is actually cool when you stop treating it like a magical compass. It's ancient. It doesn't have roots. It reproduces with spores, not seeds. Some mosses can survive drying out completely, like little plant zombies. Some scientists even use moss to study air quality. So yeah, moss is impressive, but as a directional tool, not even close. Here's a better way to think about it. Moss might grow on the north side, but only if the north side happens to be shady, moist, and comfortable, which frankly could be any side of anything, anywhere. So next time someone busts out the moss trick in the woods, just smile and say, "Cool, let's also try literally any other method that's not plant guesswork." And please don't bet your life on moss being your forest tour guide. It's green, it's soft, it looks magical in fantasy movies, but it's not your friend when you're lost in real life.
If water is clear and flowing, it's safe to drink. Okay, picture this. You're out in the wild. No stores, no taps, no vending machines in sight. You've been hiking for hours. You're sweaty, thirsty, lips dry, and then you hear it. That beautiful sound, running water. You follow the sound, and there it is, a small creek bubbling peacefully over smooth rocks, crystal clear. Looks like something out of a nature documentary. You think, "Oh, thank God, clean, moving water, I'm saved." And then you do what almost everyone thinks is totally fine in that moment. You cup your hands, scoop it up, and start drinking. Big mistake. Because here's the truth. Just because water looks clear and is flowing doesn't mean it's safe. Not even close. This is one of the most dangerous survival myths out there. It feels logical. I mean, we're taught to avoid dirty, still, murky water, right? So if it's clear and moving, it has to be clean. But that's just not how water works in nature. Let me put it this way. Bacteria, viruses, and parasites don't care how pretty the water looks. They're microscopic. You can't see them with your eyes. That clear stream might look pure as glass, but it could be harboring some seriously nasty stuff that can wreck your system in hours. So what's actually in there? Giardia. Ever heard of it? It's a tiny parasite that lives in contaminated water and gives you violent diarrhea, stomach cramps, and dehydration. Cute, huh? Cryptosporidium, another parasite, causes even worse symptoms and is super resistant to chlorine. E. coli, Salmonella, Campylobacter. These are bacteria that can easily make their way into flowing water from animal droppings upstream. Even one sick animal peeing near a creek can ruin the whole system. Viruses. Depending on the region, even viruses like norovirus and hepatitis A can show up in water sources. And here's the kicker. You have no way of knowing where that water's been. It might look clean right here, but what about 200 feet upstream? There could be a dead deer decomposing in it, or a beaver dam filled with feces, or a campsite where someone went to the bathroom too close to the stream. You're not just drinking water, you're drinking everything that happened upstream. And in a survival scenario, the last thing you need is violent diarrhea or vomiting. That will dehydrate you even faster. It turns a rough situation into a full-arm emergency. Now, people love to say, well, back in the day, people used to drink from streams all the time. Sure, and they also died of dysentery all the time, too. So let's maybe not model our survival skills after 1800s pioneer failures. So what should you do instead? Always treat wild water before drinking it. Always. Even if it's the clearest, coldest, most magical-looking water on Earth. Here are your best options in a survival situation. 1. Boil it. Bring it to a rolling boil for at least 1 minute. If you're at high elevation, above 6,500 feet, go for 3 minutes just to be safe. 2. Use a water filter. There are compact, lightweight filters made just for hiking and survival. Some fit in water bottles, some are straw style. These remove most bacteria and protozoa. 3. Purification tablets. These use iodine or chlorine dioxide. Drop them in, wait the required time, usually 30 minutes, and it'll kill most nasties. Not perfect, but much safer than raw creek water. 4. UV light purifiers. High-tech and battery-powered, these zap pathogens in seconds. Not always practical in long-term survival, but great in a pinch. 5. If you have nothing, try to collect rainwater or dew instead. Much safer than untreated stream water. Or at least use a shirt to filter out debris before boiling it. Here's the thing. You don't need fancy gear to avoid getting sick. Even just boiling water over a campfire dramatically increases your chances of survival. But skipping this step? That's like rolling the dice with your digestive system. Let me tell you a quick true story. There was this guy, experienced hiker, smart, fit, knew the area. Got caught in the woods longer than expected. Ran low on water. Found a beautiful spring-fed stream and drank straight from it. 2 days later, giardia, intense cramps, couldn't walk more than 10 steps without needing to squat, completely dehydrated. Eventually, had to activate his emergency beacon because he couldn't move anymore. All from one drink of clean water. So yeah, even the pros can get it wrong. And the worst part is, the damage doesn't hit instantly. You might feel fine for a day or two. You'll think, I'm good, that myth is a myth. Then, suddenly, your gut turns into a war zone, and you're wishing you'd never trusted that peaceful-looking stream. So remember, if it's not bottled, boiled, or filtered, don't drink it. The forest doesn't come with a safety label. Just because something looks safe doesn't mean it is. In fact, that's kind of the theme with a lot of survival myths. They look good, they sound clever, but they fall apart the moment reality shows up. You don't need to be paranoid, just smart. And in the wild, smart beats thirsty every time.
Eating snow is a good way to hydrate. All right, so picture this. You're stranded in the mountains. It's cold. Snow everywhere. No rivers, no lakes, no plastic water bottles falling from the sky. Just an endless winter landscape. And then it hits you. Wait a second. Snow is just frozen water, right? I'll just eat that. Boom. Problem solved. Nature's snow cone. But hold up. Don't start chowing down on fistfuls of snow just yet. Because, yeah, snow is frozen water, but eating it straight is one of the fastest ways to mess yourself up in a cold survival situation. Here's the myth. If you're thirsty in a snowy environment, just eat snow. It'll hydrate you. Sounds logical. Water is water, right? But here's what people don't realize. Your body isn't just trying to stay hydrated. It's also fighting to stay warm. And snow doesn't help with either one of those things unless you handle it the right way. Let's break it down. When you eat snow, your body has to melt it. That takes energy, real energy. Your core temperature drops while your body tries to warm up that icy chunk you just swallowed. It's like tossing an ice cube into a hot cup of tea, only the tea is your bloodstream. So instead of giving you hydration, snow actually pulls heat away from your body. If you're already cold, exhausted, or on the edge of hypothermia, eating snow just speeds that up. Let me say that again. Eating snow can accelerate hypothermia. You're trading dehydration for freezing. Not exactly an upgrade. And here's the kicker. Snow doesn't even give you that much water. It's like 90% air. Think of how much snow it takes to make 1 cup of water. A lot. You could shovel mouthful after mouthful and you'd still be way behind on your hydration needs and probably colder than before. It's a bad trade all around. Now, some people will say, well, I'll just suck on it slowly. Still not great. Even that small chill in your mouth can lower your core temperature over time. And if your lips or tongue are already cold or cracked, enjoy that ice burn feeling as your skin basically freezes to itself. Plus, let's not pretend snow is always clean. It might look like pristine powder, but unless you just saw it fall from the sky, it could be full of dirt, bacteria, or even animal waste. Ever heard of yellow snow? Yeah, there's also brown snow and green snow and snow that looks clean but has been sitting under trees where birds do their business. Not exactly Evian. Now don't get me wrong. You absolutely can use snow to survive, but there's a right way to do it. 1. Melt it first. Use a fire, a stove, even body heat if you're desperate. A metal cup near a flame works wonders. Once it's liquid, then drink it. 2. Insulate the container while melting. If you're using body heat, wrap the snow in a bag or bottle and tuck it into your jacket. Just don't put snow directly on your skin, you'll just get colder. 3. Add small amounts of snow gradually. Dumping a big lump of snow into a hot pan or cup can actually damage your gear and take forever. Warm water melts snow faster than cold water does. 4. Filter it if needed. If you're unsure about the cleanliness, run the melted snow through a cloth or filter to get rid of debris or contaminants. And here's a fun fact. Your body actually uses more energy melting snow than you might expect. Depending on your situation, you might be burning calories just to get less water than you're losing through cold exposure. So again, it's not nothing, but it's a bad deal unless you melt it first. So why do so many people believe this myth? Probably because it shows up in movies all the time. The hero gets lost in the mountains, munches on snow, and somehow powers through without turning into a popsicle. But real life isn't that clean. Out there, your body is always on the edge.
especially in cold survival. Every decision either helps you hold on a little longer or drags you a little closer to hypothermia. And once your core temp drops too far, forget about hydration. Your brain fugs, your muscles stop cooperating. You get clumsy. You make dumb decisions. It becomes a downward spiral that's hard to recover from without serious help. All because you trusted a handful of innocent-looking snow. So here's the rule of thumb. Snow is not a drink. It's a frozen problem you have to solve first. Melt it, then drink it. And if you don't have a fire or a stove, try to collect water from natural sources instead, like icicles, wet moss, or puddles from melting snow off of rocks. Even catching snowflakes on fabric and letting them drip into a container works better than stuffing it in your mouth like a slushie. You got enough problems out there. Don't add self-inflicted cold shock to the list. So yeah, next time you're cold, tired, and see a blanket of snow, don't think, hydration. Think, okay, potential hydration if I do this smart. Because that's what survival really is. Not just acting, but thinking.
You can safely eat anything animals eat. All right, let's say you're stuck in the wild. You've gone through your last granola bar, your stomach's growling louder than the wolves, and you're officially in eat something or pass out mode. You spot a squirrel nibbling on some berries, or maybe you see a bird pecking at a strange mushroom, or a deer chewing on some leafy green plant, and naturally your brain goes, well, hey, if they can eat it, I can eat it too, right? No. Please no. This is one of those myths that sounds reasonable and is actually super dangerous. Just because an animal can eat something doesn't mean you can, not even close. Let's break this down. Animals have very different digestive systems than we do. Squirrels, raccoons, deer, birds, their stomachs are built to handle things that would make us violently ill or worse. Some animals can eat raw mushrooms that would be instantly toxic to us. Some can digest berries full of cyanide. Others have enzymes we don't, or they chew the stuff in a completely different way, which changes how it's broken down. For example, birds eat holly berries. No problem. Do you eat them? You might end up with nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, or a hospital trip, if you're lucky. Deer eat tons of plants that are mildly to severely toxic to humans. Goats eat poison ivy like it's a snack. Bears can eat certain roots and wild fruits that would send your intestines into full revolt. Why the difference? Evolution. These animals have had thousands, even millions of years to adapt to their environment and develop stomachs, livers, and immune systems that tolerate specific foods. You haven't. Your gut is a delicate little houseplant compared to the iron stomach of a raccoon. And look, in a real survival scenario, you might get desperate. Hunger messes with your thinking. You get tired, slower, foggier, so the temptation to follow the squirrels is real. But that's exactly why this myth is so dangerous. It gives you a false sense of safety. It makes you think, oh, nature's got a buffet just waiting for me. I just have to copy the locals. But here's the problem. Animals can eat things that will absolutely kill a human being, silently, quickly, sometimes without any warning signs. Take mushrooms, for example. Some mushrooms are perfectly safe. Some are instantly lethal, even in tiny amounts, and some have delayed symptoms. You eat them, feel fine for 6 to 12 hours, then your liver starts failing. Can you tell the difference just by looking? Spoiler, most people can't. And just because a squirrel nibbled one doesn't mean it's safe for you. That squirrel probably doesn't care. It might die later or it might have immunity. Either way, you're not built the same. Or berries. There are hundreds of types of wild berries. Some look almost identical to each other. One might be harmless, the other might cause seizures or kidney failure. Birds, again, can eat them no problem. But your body? Total meltdown. Here's another one. Acorns. Squirrels eat acorns like they're candy, and humans can eat them too, but only if you process them properly. Raw acorns contain tannins, which can cause nausea and digestive issues. You have to boil them in water repeatedly to leach out the toxins, which most people don't know. So again, the squirrel is doing fine. You're hunched over a log, regretting everything. Let's not even get into plants. Wild plants are a whole universe of risk. Some will just upset your stomach. Others can shut down your organs. Some even paralyze your nervous system. And there's no built-in label that says poisonous unless you know exactly what to look for. Even experienced foragers carry books, references, and still double-check everything. Animals don't have a built-in rule book for what's safe for you. They're not leaving Yelp reviews on forest snacks. They're just doing what works for them. So, what should you do instead? If you're in a survival scenario and you're desperate for food, 1. Focus on finding clean water first. You can survive weeks without food, only a few days without water. Get that sorted first. If you do need to eat, stick with the basics. Insects? Yes, seriously, they're high protein and low risk if you know which ones to eat. Nuts that you recognize, like wild hazelnuts if you're trained to identify them. Roots or plants you know for sure are edible, things you've studied, not guessed. Fish or small game if you can catch and cook it. Avoid mushrooms, berries, and unknown plants unless you're absolutely certain. Guessing equals gambling, and in survival, bad bets cost you everything. 4. Learn the universal edibility test. It's a long process, but it's a system used by survival experts to test unknown plants safely over 24 hours. Not perfect, but better than watching what the birds are eating. 5. Make learning a habit before you're in trouble. Study edible wild plants in your region. Learn from foraging books. Go on hikes and practice ID. Survival starts with knowledge, not guesswork. Bottom line, you are not a squirrel. You are not a bird. You are not a goat, a deer, or a mushroom-proof bear. You are a human, and your stomach is playing on easy mode compared to most wildlife. So don't copy the animals. Don't play forest roulette with your gut. In doubt, don't eat it. Survival isn't just about being bold. It's about being smart. And nothing wrecks a smart plan faster than vomiting in a bush because you trusted a chipmunk's diet.
Boiling water kills everything. All right, quick question. You're out in the woods, thirsty, and you finally find a stream. The water looks a little sketchy, kind of murky, maybe with some stuff floating in it. But you've seen enough survival shows to remember the golden rule. Just boil it. Boiling kills everything. So you build a fire, heat up your water, wait for those bubbles, and then drink it like a seasoned survivalist. Problem solved, right? Well, not exactly. See, this is one of those myths that's partly true, but also dangerously misleading if you take it at face value. Because while boiling water does kill most living organisms, it doesn't magically erase all the dangers that might be lurking in there. And depending on what's actually in that water, you might be giving yourself a nasty surprise. Let's break it down. What boiling actually does. First, the good news. Yes, boiling is one of the most effective ways to disinfect water in the wild. Bring it to a rolling boil for at least 1 minute or 3 minutes at high altitudes, and you're pretty much guaranteed to kill bacteria like E. coli and Salmonella, parasites like Giardia and Cryptosporidium, although Cryptosporidium is a bit tougher, most viruses that cause disease. So yeah, it's a solid first step. But here's the catch. Boiling only kills biological threats. It does not remove chemical contamination, heavy metals, sediment, or anything that doesn't die from heat. In other words, if your water source has been tainted with fuel runoff, pesticides, lead, mercury, arsenic, or even dead animals upstream, boiling it won't make it safe. You'll just be sipping on a nice hot cup of chemical soup. Yum. Real-life example? Let's say you're camping near farmland. You find a river and decide to boil the water before drinking. What you don't know is that fertilizer and pesticide runoff from the farm has seeped into that stream. Even after boiling, you're still drinking chemical-laced water. Over time, this can wreck your kidneys, liver, and more. Or maybe you're downriver from a mining area and the water has traces of heavy metals. Boiling won't fix that either. And don't forget about turbid water, the kind that's cloudy, full of dirt or organic material. Boiling that won't make it magically clean. It'll still look and taste disgusting. Plus, all that murky stuff can shield parasites from the heat, allowing them to survive even after boiling. Cryptosporidium, for example, forms tough little shells called oocysts that can resist normal boiling times. You might need a full 10 minutes at high boil to be sure they're dead. And guess what? Most people don't do that in a survival situation. So yeah, that cup of tea might come with a side of intestinal parasites. So why do people think boiling is enough? It's simple, because in many situations, boiling is better than nothing. And it's true. If you're in a pinch, boiling is still way safer than drinking straight from the source. It's just not the end-all solution we've been led to believe. A lot of survival shows, bushcraft videos, and even some basic survival guides throw around the phrase boil your water like it's a fix-all. But they don't always tell you what boiling doesn't fix. Here's what boiling won't do. Remove toxins from algal blooms, like blue-green algae, which can produce neurotoxins. Neutralize chemicals or fuel in the water. Make dirty water taste better. Filter out plastic particles or microtrash floating in polluted sources. Reverse the effects of decay if something dead is upstream. Let's say you find a pool of standing water that's been sitting in the sun for days, full of rotting leaves, dead bugs, and possibly animal droppings. You can boil that water all you want. It's still going to be nasty and possibly dangerous. Boiling it is like using a flamethrower on a dirty toilet. It might kill the germs, but you still wouldn't want to drink what's left behind. So what should you do? If you really want to make water safe in the wild, here's the smarter process. 1. Pre-filter it. Pour it through a cloth, bandana, or even coffee filter to get rid of sediment and debris. If it's muddy or full of floaty bits, filter twice. 2. Then boil it. Bring it to a full rolling boil. 1 minute minimum, 3 minutes if you're at a high altitude. Optional. 3. Add purification if you suspect chemicals or weird stuff. If you have water purification tablets or a filter with a carbon element, use it after boiling. Activated carbon can remove some chemicals and improve taste. Best option is 4. Carry a good filter. Life Straw, Sawyer Mini, Grail bottles, these things can do way more than boiling alone. They filter out bacteria, parasites, microplastics, and even some chemicals. And 5, avoid sketchy water sources entirely. If it looks or smells off, find a better one. Flowing water is usually better than stagnant pools, but still not guaranteed to be safe. So why is this a dangerous myth? Because if you rely only on boiling and ignore the other dangers, you could end up with long-term poisoning from heavy metals, with acute illness from undestroyed parasites, with severe dehydration because you drink less due to awful taste, or, in the worst-case scenario, with organ failure from toxins that boiling didn't touch. And here's the real kicker. In a survival situation, getting sick from bad water doesn't just make you uncomfortable. It can kill you. Diarrhea leads to dehydration. Vomiting makes you weaker. And suddenly, your smart survival move turns into a slow spiral toward exhaustion and collapse. Bottom line, boiling water is good. It's smart, but it's not magic, and it's not enough on its own when the water source is questionable. So don't fall for the myth that boiling makes any water safe. If you want to live to tell the tale, treat water the same caution you'd treat wild animals. Assume it's dangerous until proven otherwise. Because nature doesn't care about your good intentions, only your good preparation.
You need to eat immediately in a survival situation. Okay, let's set the scene. You've just gotten lost in the woods, you have no cell service, your backpack's light, and night's coming fast. And suddenly, this thought hits you like a brick. Oh no, I need to find food, like right now. And not just a little food. Your brain is already flashing images of berries, fish, mushrooms, anything edible. You're panicking not because you're cold, not because you're injured, but because you're worried about starving. Like you might keel over in 24 hours if you don't chow down. Sound familiar? You're not alone. Thanks to movies, TV shows, and dramatic survival stories, a lot of us have absorbed this weird, baked-in idea that the first thing we should worry about in a survival situation is food. Here's the thing, though. That idea can get you killed. The 3-3-3 rule of survival. Let's clear something up using a rule that real survival experts swear by. It's not fancy, but it's solid. You can survive 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without shelter in extreme weather, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. Yep, 3 weeks. That means in almost every survival scenario, food is dead last on the priority list. But most people, they flip it. They start looking for berries before they've figured out where they're sleeping, how they're staying warm, or what they're going to drink. And that mistake burns precious time, drains energy, and distracts from the stuff that actually matters in the short term. So why does this myth exist? Well, first, hunger feels dramatic. You feel it in your gut. Your stomach growls. You get lightheaded, and your brain screams, "We're going to die if we don't eat." So people listen to that. They think, if I don't eat today, I'm screwed tomorrow. Plus, we live in a world where most people eat 3 meals a day plus snacks without skipping. Missing lunch is treated like a big deal. So, when you're out in the wild and skip a meal or two, it feels catastrophic, even though it's not. Also, let's be real, TV doesn't help. How many survival shows start with someone immediately setting a trap or fishing? Makes for good entertainment, sure, but they usually have camera crews, safety nets, and some off-screen snacks. You, not so much. The real danger of this myth. If you're truly stuck in a survival situation and you immediately go into food hunting mode, here's what could happen. You start wandering farther from where you got lost, making it harder for rescuers to find you. You waste precious energy and burn calories faster than you can possibly replace them. You might eat the wrong thing,
wild plants or mushrooms that look edible but are actually toxic. You risk injury, climbing trees, walking over unstable terrain, digging through brush, all while your body's already under stress. You ignore the more immediate needs, like building shelter, starting a fire, or finding clean water. Basically, you're solving the wrong problem first and doing it badly. What hunger actually feels like in survival. Here's a reality check. In the first 24-48 hours of not eating, your body starts shifting gears. You might feel weak or moody, but unless you're already underweight or sick, you're not in danger yet. Your body will start burning glycogen stores, then fat. You'll feel tired, maybe cold, but not on death's door. In fact, most people can go several days without food and still function, especially if they're staying hydrated and conserving energy. And ironically, trying to find food can actually make you hungrier because you're moving, stressing, getting cold, burning energy you don't have to spare. So, yeah, that whole image of foraging immediately to survive, that's more Hollywood than helpful. When is it actually time to worry about food? Now, let's be clear, food is still important. You'll need it eventually, but it's the later priority, not a now priority. You only start seriously needing food after several days, or if you're exerting yourself a lot over time, like hiking miles every day without rest. Even then, calorie conservation matters more than calorie intake. In other words, don't run around trying to find a squirrel. Sit still and don't waste calories unless you've already handled the following. You have shelter, protection from cold, rain, wind, or sun. You have a way to stay warm, like a fire or dry layers. You found a clean water source, or at least a way to make dirty water drinkable. You've signaled for rescue, using a fire, mirror, bright clothing, or a big SOS made from sticks or rocks. You know your location and situation are stable, no predators, no dangerous terrain, no chance of immediate threat. Then you can start thinking about food. What actually to do in the first 24 to 48 hours? Stay put. Unless you're sure help won't come, staying in one place helps rescuers find you faster. Focus on warmth and water. These will affect your survival in hours, not days. Rest. Every bit of movement costs calories. The less you move, the longer your energy lasts. Avoid panic. Hunger comes and goes. Ride the wave and remind yourself you're not going to die from missing dinner. But what if you do need food eventually? Good question. After a few days, sure, you'll need to start thinking about it, but even then, don't go full caveman. Here's a smarter approach. Scavenge, don't hunt. Look for calorie-rich, easy-to-identify options like nuts, insects, or known edible plants. Don't waste energy chasing animals unless you're trained to trap them. Avoid risky foraging. If you're not 100% sure what a plant is, don't eat it. Even small amounts of the wrong thing can wreck your system. Fish if you have the gear and the patience, but again, don't do it unless you've already got shelter and water sorted. And remember, you can't out-forage your calorie burn. If you're burning 3,000 calories a day trying to find 200 worth of food, you're digging a metabolic hole fast. Bottom line is the idea that you need to eat immediately to survive is a myth born from comfort culture, not survival experience. In real life, food is the least urgent thing on your list, and obsessing over it early can cost you your life. So the next time you're in the woods or thinking through a worst-case scenario, remember, you can't eat your way out of trouble. But you can survive a while without food, as long as you stay smart, stay still, and stay warm.
You should suck venom out of a snake bite. Let's paint the picture. You're out in the wild. Maybe hiking, maybe camping. Life's good until, out of nowhere, bam, snake bite. It's fast, it's scary, and all you can think of is something you saw in a movie once. You've got to suck the venom out. So you, or worse, your buddy, leans in, puts mouth to wound like it's a cowboy western, and tries to vacuum out the poison like they're saving your life. It feels heroic, urgent, dramatic, but it's also totally wrong, like dangerously wrong. Because here's the truth. Sucking out snake venom doesn't work. Never has, never will. And trying it might just make things worse. Where did this idea even come from? Blame pop culture. Movies, old survival guides, cowboy legends, all sorts of stuff drilled this myth into our heads. You know the scene. A rugged hero gets bit, slices the wound open, sucks out the poison, and spits dramatically into the dirt. Cue intense music, cue relief. It looks badass. It feels logical. Poison's in the body, right? So why not try to pull it out? But the human body and snake venom don't work that way. What actually happens when you get bitten? Let's slow things down for a sec. Snake venom isn't some kind of liquid sitting politely under the skin waiting to be vacuumed out. Once you're bitten, the venom starts spreading instantly into your tissues, into your bloodstream, depending on the type of snake. Some venoms attack the blood. Some go after nerves. Some destroy tissue from the inside out. And that spread, it's way faster than your mouth. By the time you bend down and try to suck anything out, the venom is already well on its way through your system. You're not catching it. You're not slowing it down. You're just swapping panic for something that looks like action but doesn't help. Why sucking it out actually makes it worse. Let's talk about the risks, because not only does this trick fail, it can also create new problems. 1, you damage the wound more. If you cut the bite open, which some people still think is step 1, you're making the injury worse and risking serious infection. 2, you expose yourself to infection. Your mouth is full of bacteria. Putting it on a puncture wound? Not smart. Now the bite victim might have venom and an infection to deal with. 3, you expose yourself to venom. If you've got any cuts or sores in your mouth, and let's be honest, most people do, that venom can get into your system. Now you've got 2 people in trouble instead of 1. 4, you waste time. Every second you spend messing around with suction tricks is time you should be spending getting real help. Basically, you're turning a bad situation into a worse one, all for a method that doesn't even work. But what about those venom extractor kits? Ah, yes, the little suction pump kits they sell at outdoor stores. They promise to pull out poison like a miniature vacuum. Sounds cool in theory, but guess what? They're also mostly useless. Multiple studies, including one by the Annals of Emergency Medicine, found that these kits remove almost none of the venom, less than 2% in most cases. Don't slow down the venom's effects. Can actually cause tissue damage and necrosis around the bite site. So yeah, even the gear that's supposed to do the job barely moves the needle. Literally. What you should actually do. Now let's talk about real-world survival. If someone gets bitten by a venomous snake, here's what actually helps. 1. Stay calm. This sounds impossible, but it's crucial. The more your heart rate spikes, the faster the venom spreads. So breathe slowly, keep your movements minimal. Tell your body, let's not turbocharge the poison. 2. Keep the affected limb still and lower than the heart. This slows the spread of venom through the bloodstream. Don't elevate it. Don't move it more than necessary. Immobilize it if you can. 3. Call for help immediately. Time is everything. Call emergency services or send someone to get help. Don't try to tough it out. Antivenom is the real treatment, and you need to get to a hospital for that. 4. Take off tight clothing or jewelry. Bites can cause swelling. Remove anything that might become a problem as the limb expands. 5. Mark the bite area. If you have a pen, draw a circle around the bite and note the time. This can help medical professionals track the swelling and progression of venom. 6. Do not suck the venom, cut the wound, apply a tourniquet, drink alcohol or caffeine, apply ice, try to catch or kill the snake. But don't some cultures do it differently? Yes, and context matters. In places without access to modern hospitals, people sometimes still try traditional methods like cutting or suction, but that's usually because they don't have access to real treatment, not because it's the best choice. It's born out of desperation, not effectiveness. If you're watching this video, chances are you live somewhere with hospitals, phones, emergency services, or at least people who can help. So use that. Don't copy survival methods that were born in areas where nothing else was available. What if you don't know if the snake was venomous? Great question. Not all snake bites are from venomous snakes, but unless you're an expert herpetologist, aka snake scientist, don't gamble. Treat every bite as potentially dangerous until proven otherwise. Also, don't waste time trying to identify the snake. Don't chase it. Don't take selfies. If you get a good look, you can describe it later. Otherwise, just focus on getting help. And remember, even dry bites from venomous snakes can still require treatment, not because of venom, but because of bacterial infection, trauma, or allergic reactions. Bottom line, sucking out venom isn't just a bad idea. It's a myth that can cause real harm. It feels like a quick fix. It looks noble, but it's pure movie nonsense. The venom is already in your body. You can't suck it out, spit it out, or squeeze it out. The only thing that helps is staying calm, slowing the spread, and getting medical help ASAP. So next time someone brings up the cowboy cure, you can hit him with the truth. Sucking out snake venom doesn't save lives. It wastes time. And in survival, time is everything.
Eating raw meat or insects gives you instant energy. All right, survival scenario time. You're stranded. Maybe it's the jungle, maybe it's the mountains. Your stomach is growling like an angry bear, and there's no granola bar in sight. Suddenly, you spot something. A bug, a grub, a lizard, maybe even a piece of raw fish fresh from the stream. And the myth creeps into your brain. If I eat this raw, I'll get a quick energy boost. Fast calories, survival mode, eat now, worry later. But hold up, because while that might sound like something Bear Grylls would do on TV, it's not that simple. In fact, depending on what you put in your mouth, it might hurt you way more than it helps. Let's break this myth down because it's one of those ideas that seems logical at first until you look closer. Why people think this works. When you're starving, your body wants calories, especially protein and fat. And yes, raw meat and insects are full of those. That part's true. So, in theory,
Munching on a raw grasshopper or a sliver of raw fish should fuel you, right? In theory, sure. But your body isn't just a gas tank. It's a complicated biological machine, and what you put into it matters, especially in survival conditions when your system is already running on empty. Let's talk raw meat first. Most people hear raw meat and instantly think of sushi or steak tartare. But here's the thing. Those are carefully prepared under strict safety conditions. You, out in the wild, you're not working with clean countertops and temperature-controlled storage. You're working with whatever you can scavenge. And that's where the danger starts. The raw truth. Raw meat can carry all kinds of nasty passengers, including salmonella, E. coli, listeria, trichinella parasites, tapeworms. These aren't just stomachache level problems. In a survival situation where you're already weak, possibly dehydrated, and far from medical help, a gut infection can be deadly. Symptoms like diarrhea, vomiting, cramps, and fever, they'll drain your energy, not give you more. You'll lose fluids, strength, and your ability to move. That energy boost becomes a full system crash. And don't even think about eating raw roadkill or half-rotten meat from an animal that's already dead. If bacteria and parasites had time to multiply in it, you're basically chewing on a biological time bomb. But what about insects? Now here's where it gets tricky. People love to say things like, insects are the food of the future. And yes, it's true that some insects are edible and actually packed with protein and fat. In some cultures, they're totally normal. But here's the problem in survival scenarios. Not all bugs are safe to eat, and even the edible ones aren't necessarily safe when raw. What can go wrong? 1. Parasites and bacteria. Just like raw meat, raw bugs can carry stuff your gut really doesn't want. 2. Chemical toxins. Some insects produce natural poisons to protect themselves. Eat the wrong one, you might end up hallucinating or worse. 3. Insecticide exposure. If you're in an area where bugs may have come into contact with pesticides, you're taking in poison from 2 directions. 4. Hard shells, or chitin. A lot of bugs have tough outer shells that your body can't digest. If you're already starving, these can irritate your gut and waste more energy than they give you. Plus, many insects have sharp parts, legs, wings, mandibles, that can actually scratch your throat or digestive tract if you don't cook them first. That's the kind of problem you do not want when you're miles from help. Cooking changes everything. The thing most people forget is raw food isn't efficient food. Your body has to work harder to digest it, especially meat. Cooking does a few extremely helpful things. Kills parasites and bacteria, breaks down tough fibers, makes protein and fat easier to absorb, reduces risk of food poisoning. So, ironically, if you're desperate for instant energy, raw food is a worse option. Cooked food is faster, safer, and easier to process. Even bugs, when roasted or boiled, become way safer to eat. You don't need seasoning or fancy gear. A stick and a fire go a long way. The digestive system factor. Here's another thing. Digestion takes energy. When you're already in a calorie deficit, the food you eat should give you more energy than it costs. Raw meat and insects, especially loaded with bacteria or tough to break down, can cost your body more energy than you actually gain.
It's like putting muddy gasoline into a sports car. It might run for a second, but you're doing long-term damage for a short-term gain that probably doesn't even exist. What if you have no fire? All right, worst case scenario, it's raining, no matches, no lighter, no sun to even solar cook. Just you, your rumbling belly, and a forest full of questionable protein. If you're absolutely desperately starving and it's a do-or-die choice, maybe you try a raw bug that's widely known to be safe, like certain grubs or crickets. But this is a last resort, and even then, you'd want to peel off wings, legs, and heads and eat the soft part inside. And you'd still be taking a risk. Same with meat. Don't eat it raw unless you know exactly what you're doing, and there's literally no other option. And even then, it's still a gamble with your body as the betting chip. What you should actually do for energy. Instead of diving mouth first into raw mystery meat, here's what you should prioritize. Boil or roast what you find, if at all possible. Forage plants you recognize, berries, roots, nuts. These often offer sugars and carbs that are easier to digest and convert into quick energy. Save your energy. Don't burn more calories hunting food than you're going to get from eating it. Stay hydrated. Dehydration kills faster than starvation. Always address water first. A quick note on TV survival shows. They're entertainment. That's it. Just because a guy on a show eats a wriggling bug or takes a bite out of a fish head doesn't mean it's safe or smart. Those shows often have medical teams on standby, knowledge of what's safe in the region, and camera cuts that skip the hours of nausea and cramping afterwards. Don't let a stylized moment of tough guy TV make you think eating raw stuff is a guaranteed energy boost. In real survival, your goal isn't to look cool. It's to stay alive and avoid anything that'll make that harder. Bottom line is, eating raw meat or insects might seem like a fast track to energy, but it's a huge risk with very little payoff. Unless you're trained, prepared, and absolutely sure what you're eating is safe and clean, it's better to cook it, avoid it, or find something else entirely. Your gut and your future self will thank you.
Carrying salt helps prevent dehydration. All right, picture this. You're lost in the wilderness. The sun is beating down on you. You're sweating buckets, and you start to feel that dryness creeping into your mouth. Dehydration is knocking at the door. But no worries, right? You were smart. You packed salt. Because, hey, someone once told you that salt helps prevent dehydration. Maybe it was in a prepper forum, or an old military tip, or just something your uncle said while hiking. Sprinkle a little salt in your water, or just lick it straight, and you'll lock that hydration in, right? Yeah, no. In reality, this is one of those survival myths that sounds logical, but can backfire fast. Let's unpack what's actually going on here. Where this myth comes from. There's a tiny grain of truth behind the idea, and like most survival myths, that's what makes it so believable. In medical settings, especially with athletes or people suffering from heat exhaustion, electrolytes like sodium, potassium, and chloride are crucial. These are the minerals that help your body regulate fluids, contract muscles, and send nerve signals. When you sweat a lot, you don't just lose water, you also lose electrolytes, including salt. So yes, technically, if you're sweating like crazy, replacing lost salt can be important. But here's the problem. Just carrying salt or dumping it into your water or mouth doesn't actually hydrate you, and in many cases, it can make things worse. Salt does not equal hydration. Let's get one thing clear. Salt is not a hydration source. It doesn't hold water in your body like some magical sponge. It's not fuel. It's not water. It's a mineral that your body uses in balance. Emphasis on balance. When that balance is off, either too little or too much, your body freaks out. Now imagine you're already low on water. Your kidneys are working hard, and suddenly you start licking salt tablets or drinking salty water thinking you're helping yourself. What are you actually doing? Increasing your internal salt concentration, making your body even more desperate for water to dilute it. In other words, you're pushing yourself deeper into dehydration. How dehydration really works. Your body is constantly trying to maintain something called osmotic balance, which is just a fancy term for keeping the levels of water and minerals in your blood in the right proportion. When you're dehydrated, your body doesn't just need salt, it needs plain water to bring things back to normal. If you add more salt without enough water, it's like trying to fix a fire with gasoline. Your kidneys will go into overdrive trying to flush out the excess sodium, which requires, you guessed it, more water. But wait, you're already short on water. So now your body starts drawing fluid from other parts of your system, like your cells and tissues, to get rid of the salt. The result? You become more dehydrated, not less. Salt without water equals bad news. If you're carrying salt and hoping it'll help you hydrate, here's what could happen instead. Dry mouth, increased thirst, nausea, headaches, dizziness, confusion, and in extreme cases, organ damage or heat stroke. You're literally speeding up the symptoms you're trying to avoid. Salt only helps when paired with plenty of clean water, like in oral rehydration solutions or electrolyte drinks. And even then, the amounts are carefully balanced. You can't just eyeball it with table salt and call it good. What about sports drinks and salt tablets? Okay, let's talk about those little salt capsules and electrolyte drinks people bring on hikes or runs. They exist for a reason, but they're not a free pass. Those things are designed for people who are actively sweating a lot, drinking lots of water alongside, under controlled, short-term physical stress. They're supplements, not solutions. Even then, sport drinks contain way less salt than you think. A typical bottle of Gatorade has around 270 milligrams of sodium. That's about 1/10 of a teaspoon. So if you're out here thinking you can take a whole salt packet and call it electrolyte replacement, you're wildly overshooting. Seawater is a perfect example. Want to know why salt doesn't help dehydration? Just look at seawater. It's wet, right? It's water. But if you drink it, it kills you faster than just going without. Seawater is about 3.5% salt by volume, which is way more than your body can handle. When you drink it, the salt pulls water out of your cells, making you thirstier and dehydrating you even more. People who try to survive at sea by drinking seawater usually end up vomiting, hallucinating, passing out, and dying from kidney failure or brain swelling. It's not the lack of water that kills them, it's the excess salt. So, should you ever use salt in survival? Yes, but only very, very carefully and never alone. If you have access to clean, potable water, measured amounts of salt, ideally in a pre-mixed electrolyte packet, and are experiencing heavy sweating or diarrhea, then adding a small pinch of salt to your water, along with some sugar if you have it, can help your body absorb it faster. This is basically the DIY version of oral rehydration solution, which is used in medicine to treat dehydration. But we're talking 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt per liter of water here, not handfuls. It's a science, not a guess. And if you don't have clean water, salt is not the thing you should be reaching for first. In fact, it shouldn't be anywhere near your top priorities. What you should actually do: if you're worried about dehydration in the wild, your first move should be find or purify water. Sip it slowly over time. Avoid caffeine, alcohol, or salt-heavy foods. Stay in shade. Avoid overexertion. Rest and cool your body. If you do have access to water and you're sweating heavily, a tiny bit of salt can help, but it should always be diluted and only in specific conditions. Better yet, carry a proper electrolyte packet. They weigh nothing, cost little, and actually work. Some hikers even make their own mix with salt, sugar, and baking soda. But the key is you need water to go with it. Bottom line? Carrying salt might make you feel prepared, but if you don't know how and when to use it, it's not helping you survive. It might actually make things worse. Salt is not a magic bullet for dehydration. It's a support player, not the main character. If you're packing a survival kit, prioritize clean water and ways to purify more of it, not a baggie of table salt and wishful thinking. Follow birds to find water. You've probably heard this one if you've ever skimmed a survival book or watched an old adventure movie. If you're lost and desperate for water, just look to the skies. Birds, they say, always know where to find water. Follow them, and you'll stumble across a stream, pond, or oasis in no time. It sounds beautifully simple, doesn't it? Like nature's giving you a secret compass. But let's be real for a second. This idea might sound helpful, but in an actual survival situation, it's almost guaranteed to waste your time, energy, and might even get you more lost. The belief is based on a grain of truth, like most dangerous myths are. Yes, birds need water, and yes, some species do routinely visit water sources. But the reality is way messier and way more unreliable than people think. First off, not all birds behave the same way. Some birds, especially desert species, get most of their moisture from food, like seeds, fruit, or insects. They don't even need to drink open water regularly. Others might drink from morning dew on leaves, puddles caught in tree bark, or even just wet soil. Not exactly a big, shimmering lake you can refill your bottle from. And even the birds that do rely on open water, they can fly for miles. Think about that. You might spot a bird overhead and start walking in the direction it came from, hoping it's returning to a pond. But what if it just flew 10 miles from there to look for food? Or what if it's not even heading to water at all, but to its nest in a dry tree? You're now burning calories, losing hydration, and trekking blindly through unknown terrain based on the assumption that this bird's internal GPS is also going to help you. You're literally betting your life on something that might be perching on a dry rock in 30 seconds. Plus, even if you do find water eventually, there's no guarantee it's going to be safe to drink. That bird might be sipping from a muddy puddle full of bacteria and parasites that your human gut can't handle. Birds can survive on sources you absolutely cannot, so just because they drink it doesn't mean you should. Another problem? You're in a forest or mountainous region with limited visibility. You catch a glimpse of something with wings through the trees. Could be a bird, could be a leaf, could be nothing. Now you're climbing up a slope or cutting through dense vegetation, chasing something you barely saw with zero confirmation it was even heading toward anything useful. Sound like a good plan? Probably not. And don't even get started on bird calls. Some survival guides will tell you to stop and listen for bird activity, chirping, squawking, flapping. Sure, birds tend to get louder around water, but they also get loud when they're mating, feeding, fighting, nesting, or just being birds. They're noisy by nature. And their calls bounce off trees and cliffs and echo in weird ways, making it nearly impossible to track them accurately unless you're a trained wildlife expert. Now let's say you do follow birds and find water. Great! What if it's a stagnant pool swarming with mosquitoes and reeking of dead leaves? What if you don't have any way to purify it? No filter, no fire, no iodine tablets. Congratulations! You've just arrived at the water source equivalent of a landmine. Drink it raw, and you're risking diarrhea, vomiting, or worse, dehydration that gets 10 times worse after your body purges everything. And in the wild, when you're already struggling to survive, getting sick from bad water can be a death sentence. It's not like you can just check into a clinic or pop an Imodium and sleep it off. It's not all hopeless, though. Observing wildlife can sometimes give you small hints. If you notice a lot of birds congregating in one area during the heat of the day, especially at dawn or dusk, there might be a water source nearby. If you see animal tracks converging in a dusty patch of land or fresh droppings that suggest recent activity, those could be clues. But they're just that, clues, not guarantees, and relying too heavily on them, especially in an emergency, can steer you wildly off course. A much better use of your time and energy? Learn how to read the land itself. Look for low-lying areas, like valleys or gullies, where water tends to collect. Watch for green, leafy vegetation in contrast to dry surroundings. Willows, reeds, and other moisture-loving plants often indicate that water is somewhere nearby, even if it's underground. Collect dew in the morning with a cloth or plastic sheet if you have one. Dig for water in dry riverbeds, especially where the sand feels cool. Use condensation traps if you're stuck with zero supplies. And most importantly, carry tools that can actually help you purify what you find. Water filters, tablets, even a lightweight cot if you're going old school. Because knowing where water might be is only half the battle. Making it safe to drink is the other half, and arguably more important. So yeah, the idea of following birds to find water is a romantic one. It feels connected to nature, like you're syncing up with the wild. But survival isn't about what feels right. It's about what works. And betting your life on the unpredictable habits of creatures who can literally fly away from danger while you're stuck on the ground, that's not a bet you want to make when the stakes are this high.
You can use the sun or stars to accurately navigate. You know the classic survival advice, right? If you're ever lost, just use the sun or stars to find your way. Like somehow in your moment of panic and dehydration, your brain will suddenly unlock its ancient sailor mode and guide you to safety using constellations. It's a romantic idea, for sure, navigating like the old explorers, using the cosmos as your compass. But here's the thing. Unless you've had real training and know exactly what to look for, this myth will get you turned around faster than you can say Polaris. Let's start with the sun. Yes, in theory, it rises in the east and sets in the west. That part's not wrong. But the sun doesn't follow a perfect path that you can just eyeball like a GPS arrow. Its position changes based on the season and your location on Earth. In the summer, it arcs high across the sky and sets more northwest than due west. In winter, it barely climbs and might set more southwest. So if you're just going by the sun's over there, that must be west, you're working with a guess that could be off by dozens of degrees. And in a dense forest, mountainous terrain, or even on a cloudy day, good luck figuring out where the sun even is. Shadows become distorted, angles get misleading, and if you're on uneven land, the horizon itself is an illusion. What about using an analog watch to track the sun? That old trick where you point the hour hand at the sun and bisect the angle to find self. First off, who even wears analog watches anymore in survival situations? Second, even that method is just a rough estimation, and it flips if you're in the southern hemisphere. One wrong move, and now you're heading in the exact opposite direction you thought you were. Now, stars. Oh boy. People love to throw this one around like it's foolproof. Just find the North Star and you'll know where north is. Okay, cool. But do you actually know how to find the North Star when you're cold, exhausted, and surrounded by a sky full of twinkling dots that all look exactly the same? Most people couldn't pick out the Big Dipper if you handed them a labeled star map. And even if you can find it, you need to trace the two outer stars of the Dipper's bowl and follow that line up to find Polaris. It's not the brightest star in the sky, despite what cartoons might make you think. It just happens to sit almost directly above Earth's north axis. But guess what? If you're in the southern hemisphere, Polaris is completely useless. It's not even visible from there. So what then? Hope for a full astronomy lesson in the middle of the jungle? There's also the problem of movement. Stars move across the sky throughout the night, just like the sun does during the day. If you set off walking based on the star's position at 10 p.m., by 2 a.m., it'll have shifted, and now you're unknowingly veering off course. Unless you're tracking their movement in real time and adjusting your path, which is not easy without instruments, you're relying on something that's literally drifting away from where you started. And let's be honest, when you're in a survival situation, you're not in the mood to do celestial math. You're tired, hungry, probably scared, and just want to know where the heck the road or river or ranger station is. The stars aren't going to tell you that. Even if you manage to keep a straight direction, it won't matter if you're headed toward cliffs, swamps, or a dense forest that just eats your energy. Following a direction blindly isn't the same as finding your way out. And don't get me started on people who think moss grows on the north side of trees and try to combine that with the sun or stars like some kind of wilderness Sherlock Holmes. That just layers one myth on top of another and gets you more lost. So what's the better option? It's not glamorous, but it's effective. Stay put if you're truly lost and someone might come looking for you. Or if you know for sure no one is coming, try to find a landmark, a river, a ridge, a road that gives you a real-world guide. Rivers often lead to civilization. Downhill paths tend to lead to valleys, which may have roads or towns. And if you absolutely must walk, use natural clues like consistent slopes, trail markers, if you're lucky, or even man-made objects like power lines. These are grounded, observable things, not celestial riddles that shift with time and location. The truth is, navigating by the sun or stars is a skill that takes study and practice. Real navigators train for years. Survival experts learn how to use compasses, maps, and environmental cues with precision. You don't suddenly become an expert the moment you get lost. And if you try to fake it, you're more likely to walk in circles or head deeper into danger than find your way out. So yes, The idea of using the sun or stars to navigate is a nice story, and it might work if you're well-trained in the right environment. But for the average person, it's one of the fastest ways to get even more lost.
Yelling or whistling constantly will help you get rescued. If you're ever stuck out in the wilderness, lost, scared, or injured, the first instinct that hits most people is to shout, yell for help, call out until your voice is raw. Maybe you even have a whistle on you, like one of those orange emergency ones. You blow it constantly, every few seconds, thinking, if anyone's out there, they'll hear me and come running. It feels like the logical thing to do. Stay loud, stay noticeable, right? But here's the harsh reality. Yelling or whistling nonstop isn't the clever survival strategy people think it is. In fact, it can seriously backfire and possibly decrease your chances of being found, not increase them. Let's talk about yelling first. The human voice only carries so far, especially out in nature. Trees, hills, wind, even bird song, all of it eats up sound. What you think is a loud, desperate scream might barely carry a few hundred meters, especially if the terrain is uneven or if there's wind. And unless a rescue team is practically on top of you, there's a high chance they'll never hear a thing. Worse, if you're yelling constantly, you're burning precious energy, and you're drying yourself out fast. Your throat gets sore, your voice cracks, and your body loses moisture with every breath. You end up dehydrated, exhausted, and possibly hoarse to the point where, when someone is nearby, you can't call out anymore. So now you're worn down, weak, and silent, all because you went too hard, too early. Now about that whistle. It's a great tool, don't get me wrong. A whistle can carry farther than your voice, especially if it's high-pitched and designed for emergencies. But here's the mistake. Blowing it constantly, every minute, like you're in a panic loop. Just like with yelling, it drains your energy and doesn't give rescuers any sort of pattern to work with. Sound in the wild is tricky. It bounces off rocks, gets absorbed by trees, or carried the wrong way by wind. A rescue team might hear a single whistle and have no idea where it came from. Or worse, they might not hear it at all if you only blast it when they're too far away. What works better than constant noise is strategic noise. You want to create a pattern, something repetitive, consistent, and recognizable as human-made. For example, 3 short whistle blasts, pause, wait a bit, then repeat. That's an internationally recognized distress signal. And unlike random yelling, that pattern stands out to trained ears. It says, this is a person in trouble, not just a bird or a strange echo. The pause gives rescuers a chance to respond. Maybe they'll yell back or whistle in return, and you'll actually hear it. But if you're making noise nonstop, you won't notice their reply, and they might think you didn't hear them or you've moved on. Another big problem is that yelling and whistling nonstop can lead to panic behavior. You start thinking that if you just scream louder or blow harder, someone will finally notice. But panic doesn't help you survive. It clouds your thinking. Instead of conserving energy or finding shelter, you're stuck in a loop of noise and fear, which isn't helping anyone. Your mental focus should be on staying calm, staying visible, and waiting or signaling at the right moments, not draining yourself dry, hoping someone hears your exhausted voice over the wind. And here's something else most people don't realize. Rescuers are rarely just listening.
They're looking. They scan tree lines, hills, and open areas for movement, color, contrast, visual signals, not just sound. If you're up in a tree canopy or deep in thick brush, no amount of yelling will help if they can't see you. That's why creating a visible signal, bright clothing, a fire, laid out branches, and a pattern is way more effective in the long run than losing your voice by day 2. Sound can be ignored. A weird shape in the trees, that catches attention. Also think about how your body works under stress. If you're lost, maybe you're already cold. Maybe you haven't eaten. Maybe you're dehydrated or injured. Your body is not in peak condition. Every breath you waste yelling is a calorie spent. Every whistle blast is a moment of energy used up. Survival is about smart conservation, making what you have last longer. So using your voice as your only lifeline is risky. It's a tool, but it's not the whole toolbox. And it's not just about efficiency, it's about morale. Screaming for hours with no response does something to your brain. It crushes your spirit, makes you feel hopeless, unheard, invisible. But having a system, like a whistle signal every 10 minutes or a mirror to flash sunlight, gives you a plan. Plans fight panic. Panic is the real killer in survival situations, not silence. People don't die just from being lost. They die from doing the wrong things when they are. Let's say worst-case scenario. You're stranded somewhere remote, and you think someone might be looking for you. Instead of yelling every 5 seconds, you could find an open area where you're more visible from the sky, lay out contrasting objects in a triangle or SOS shape, blow 3 whistles every 10 minutes, wait, and then repeat. Light a small, controlled signal fire if it's safe. Stay near landmarks like a river or trail where people are likely to pass. All of those increase your chances without burning through your energy reserves. Remember, most rescues take time, hours, sometimes days. Blowing your whistle every minute for 4 hours straight is going to leave you worn out. But doing it every 15 minutes for 2 days, that's sustainable. That's smart. So if you're ever out there and things sideways, don't fall for the Hollywood version of survival, where people scream for hours and someone magically shows up. Real survival is slow, quiet, and tactical. Your voice is a tool. Use it wisely. Otherwise, by the time someone gets close enough to hear you, you might not have anything left to say.
If you're lost, keep moving to find help. Okay, let's talk about one of the most dangerous survival myths out there. The one that says, if you're lost, just keep walking until you find help. Sounds proactive, right? Like you're taking charge of your situation, not just sitting around waiting to be rescued. But here's the brutal truth. That mindset has gotten a lot of people even more lost, or worse. It feels like the right thing to do in the moment. Keep moving, keep looking, don't waste time. But unless you know exactly where you're going, moving around aimlessly when you're lost can turn a bad situation into a deadly one. Let's say you're hiking, you take a wrong turn, and suddenly the trail disappears. You look around, nothing looks familiar. You panic a little. The logical thought is, okay, I'll just backtrack. Or, I'll go this way, I'm pretty sure the road is in that direction. But pretty sure is not good enough out there. Every step you take in the wrong direction compounds the problem. You end up deeper in the wilderness, farther from where people might be looking, and you burn precious daylight, calories, and energy while doing it. The forest doesn't care that you're being proactive. If you're heading in the wrong direction, it'll let you walk straight into exhaustion and dehydration. And here's something most people forget. Rescue teams start from your last known location. That's their point zero. That's where they search first. So the farther you move away from that spot, the harder you are to find. Every random detour you take increases their search radius. You're basically making their job harder without realizing it. If you had just stayed in place, or at least nearby, you would have been found a lot faster. But once you start wandering, the chances of getting spotted drop sharply. Now, I'm not saying you should never move. Obviously, if you're in imminent danger, like there's a wildfire or rising floodwaters, you need to relocate to safety. But once you're out of harm's way and you're just lost, the smartest move might be to stop. Take a breath, slow everything down, assess. Do you have cell signal? Can you climb somewhere to see better without putting yourself at risk? Can you leave a marker in case rescuers come through? These are smart moves. Wandering for hours in the hope that help lies just over the next hill is not. And let's talk about what happens physically when you keep moving. You're burning calories, which are limited. You're sweating, which leads to dehydration. If it's cold, that sweat can freeze on your skin once you stop, and now you're at risk of hypothermia. If it's hot, you're drying yourself out even faster, and your body starts overheating. You might twist an ankle, get scratched by thorns, or worse, stumble into a ravine. All of that could have been avoided if you had just stayed still. Sometimes survival is more about patience than action. People underestimate how quickly your sense of direction can vanish in the wild. Trees start looking the same. Hills blend together. The sun shifts and throws off your internal compass. What you think is a smart path is often a giant loop that brings you right back to where you started, if you're lucky. If not, you're miles away, in unfamiliar terrain, and the rescue team is searching in the complete opposite direction. And mentally, constantly moving gives you the illusion of progress, but it wears you down fast. You start second-guessing yourself. You feel desperate. The longer you go without finding a trail or road or any sign of life, the worse your judgment gets. People in survival situations have walked in circles for days, convinced they're making progress. Some get so disoriented they start ditching their gear, thinking it's slowing them down. That's how people die, tired, dehydrated, and alone, all because they didn't want to sit still and wait. Want to know what does help rescuers? Staying visible, building signals, leaving clues. If you absolutely must move, make sure you mark your path. Stack some rocks, scratch arrows into the dirt, tie fabric to branches, something, anything that shows where you've been. Better yet, if you're not in danger, just stay near where you got lost. Build a small shelter. Make yourself as visible as possible. Lay out your backpack. Hang bright clothes. Create big shapes on the ground using rocks or branches. Something, anything that shows where you've been. Even better, use your time to ration water, preserve energy, and stay calm. Maybe turn your phone off to save battery. Then check it once an hour or so, just in case a signal comes through. You'd be surprised how often people are rescued because they stayed put and did those small, smart things, not because they went full Bear Grylls and marched through the unknown. Let's be real, getting lost is terrifying. The urge to do something is overwhelming. But doing the wrong thing, like wandering blindly, can be more dangerous than doing nothing at all. Survival isn't always about strength or speed. It's about thinking clearly and not letting panic dictate your next move. Staying put might feel passive, but in reality, it's one of the most powerful decisions you can make. It tells your body to conserve. It tells your brain to plan. And most importantly, it tells the people looking for you, I'm right here. Come find me.
You can always outrun a wildfire or flash flood. Let's bust a dangerous myth that gets people killed more often than you'd think.
The idea that you can outrun a wildfire or flash flood. It sounds like something out of a movie, right? The ground starts shaking, smoke billowing behind you, and you're just sprinting like some action hero, dodging flames and leaping over fallen trees, making it out with nothing but a few dramatic scratches. Yeah, that's not how it works in real life. Nature doesn't give you warning music and slow motion moments. It moves fast, faster than you. And if you think your legs are going to save you from a wall of fire or water, think again. Let's start with wildfires. These things are terrifying. Under the right conditions, hot, dry, and windy, a wildfire can travel up to 14 miles per hour. That's faster than a human runs at full sprint. And remember, that's not on a track. That's through trees, rocks, slopes, maybe smoke so thick you can't see your own feet. Even Olympic sprinters would struggle. And you? You're probably wearing a backpack, hiking boots, maybe already tired from a long day outside. You're not sprinting, you're scrambling, slipping, panicking. And wildfires don't just come from behind. Wind can shift the flames in a second. 1 minute, it's far off. The next, it's right beside you, jumping tree to tree. Fire doesn't chase, it surrounds. And it's not just the flames that'll get you, it's the smoke. You can't outrun smoke. Inhaling even a little can make you dizzy or disoriented. Your lungs start screaming. Your eyes water, your breathing goes shallow, and then you can't move as fast. So even if the fire looks like it's far away, that thick, choking cloud is already working against you. That's how people get turned around and trapped. It's not because they didn't try to run, it's because they tried too late. Now let's talk about flash floods. Oh boy. If you've ever thought, I'll just run up that slope, or it's only water, I can beat it, you're playing a deadly game. Flash floods can move at 30 feet per second. That's like a bulldozer made of water coming at you out of nowhere. It doesn't creep in politely. It slams. 1 minute, you're walking in a dry canyon or crossing a shallow stream, and the next, there's a wall of water taller than you roaring around the corner. And here's the thing, that water isn't clean. It's carrying trees, boulders, mud, broken debris, literal weapons aimed at your chest. People think they'll hear a flood coming, like in cartoons, where it's a rumble in the distance. Not always. Sometimes it's silent until it's there. You might not get more than 10 seconds of warning, and in many places, like narrow canyons or low-lying areas, that's not enough time to do anything except scream. You won't outrun it, not uphill, not downhill, not even sideways. What makes this myth so dangerous is the false confidence it gives people. Like, if things get bad, I'll just run for it. No, that mindset gets you into trouble. You can't rely on speed when the environment moves faster than your brain can process. If you're in wildfire or flash flood country, the best survival tactic isn't running, it's planning. Knowing the terrain, knowing your exits, keeping track of the weather, listening for alerts, looking around for high ground before you need it. And if you're already seeing smoke or rising water, your escape time is probably already gone. And let's be honest, when panic kicks in, you don't make smart choices. You might run in the wrong direction. You might follow someone who's just as lost. You might trip, fall, or run straight into the danger instead of away from it.
Movies make it look clean. Reality is messy. Real survival isn't about being fast. It's about being smart before the emergency even starts. And here's another thing. In a wildfire, even if the main fire seems far away, embers can blow ahead of the front and start new fires. So just because you don't see a wall of flames doesn't mean you're safe. You could be running right into the next fire zone. Same with floods. Sometimes the water isn't in a giant wave. It could be a sudden rise in a stream that sweeps your feet out and pins you under a log. It doesn't take much. 6 inches of moving water can knock you off your feet. 2 feet can sweep away a car. Let that sink in. A car. So what do you do instead? For wildfires, know where the roads are. Understand wind direction. Avoid uphill routes if the fire's behind you. It moves faster uphill. If you absolutely have to move, head across the fire's path towards already burned areas. Fire doesn't usually burn the same spot twice. And for floods, always seek higher ground. If you're hiking in canyon country and the sky darkens, even if it's not raining on you, get out of the low ground. Flash floods can travel from storms miles away. Survival isn't about being a hero. It's about not underestimating nature. Fire and water don't negotiate. They don't slow down so you can catch your breath. If you're lucky enough to have time to move, great. But if your plan is, I'll just run faster than the danger, that's not a plan. That's a gamble. And nature, pleased to win.
Caves are always safe to hide in. All right, let's talk about a survival myth that sounds super logical at first. Hiding out in a cave. You're out in the wild, the weather turns nasty, maybe it's raining, snowing, or a storm's rolling in, and boom, you spot a cave. Dark, mysterious, but dry, and your brain instantly goes, "Ah, yes, ancient shelter, this is perfect." But let me just stop you right there. Because while caves can offer shelter, thinking they're always safe is a fast track to putting yourself in serious danger. Let's start with the obvious one. Animals. You are not the only creature on Earth looking for shelter. Bears, wolves, snakes, bats, cougars, even porcupines and raccoons. They love caves. That dark corner you want to crawl into, it might already be someone else's living room. And guess what? They're not fans of roommates. Imagine crawling into a shadowy space, relieved to finally get out of the rain, and then hearing a low growl from the back wall. Yeah, not fun. You're not going to win that argument over who gets the lease. And the scary part is, you might not even hear anything. Some animals are deep sleepers. Others, like snakes, are cold and sluggish during certain seasons, so you might not even notice them until you've already lain down, or worse, until one's curled up in your sleeping bag. Not to mention insects, spiders, scorpions. Some of these crawlies carry venom. Some just bite out of instinct. Either way, suddenly your safe cave becomes a panic room for all the wrong reasons. Okay, let's say, best case, you get lucky and the cave's empty. Still not a green light. Have you ever been in a cave when a thunderstorm hits? It's like nature's bass drum. Sound doesn't just echo in caves, it vibrates. Loud thunderclaps can feel like the whole thing is shaking. That's not even the worst of it. If it rains hard enough, water can start pouring in. Some caves have narrow entrances but widen inside, so water builds fast and can trap you before you even know what's happening. Congratulations, now you're in a flood zone with no exit. And don't even get me started on cave structure. Just because it's been standing for centuries doesn't mean it's stable. Rock falls happen. You won't hear a warning siren before a chunk of ceiling gives way. That little overhang you're resting under might be one freeze-thaw cycle away from collapsing on your head.
Even small shifts in temperature or moisture can destabilize a rock shelf. And unlike in a tent, if something goes wrong inside a cave, you can't just unzip a door and crawl out. You might be crawling through rubble if you can crawl at all. Now, let's talk about air. Yeah, air. Sounds silly, but depending on how deep the cave is and how it's shaped, ventilation might be non-existent. Some caves trap gases, carbon dioxide, radon, even ammonia from animal droppings. You go in thinking you'll just breathe easy and rest, but after a few hours, headache, dizziness, nausea, you start feeling weak and confused. That's not fatigue, that's poor air quality messing with your system. And by the time you realize it, you might not have the energy to get back out. Temperature is another one people totally underestimate. Caves are not warm and cozy. Most stay at a pretty stable internal temperature, often much colder than it feels outside. If you're wet, tired, and already cold, curling up in a damp stone chamber is a recipe for hypothermia, not recovery. Stone doesn't insulate. It sucks the heat right out of you. So even if you're out of the wind, your body's losing warmth fast. You won't even notice it happening. You'll just think, wow, I'm really tired. And then boom, your core temperature drops below safe levels and things spiral. Let's not forget about getting lost. Caves aren't always little holes in a hill. Some wind deep underground. One wrong turn and you're navigating a maze of darkness with nothing but a dying flashlight, or worse, just your phone screen. You think you'll remember the way back, but in a stress state, when everything looks the same, forget it. People have died just a few meters from a cave entrance because they got disoriented in pitch blackness. And no, your phone's GPS isn't saving you underground. No signal, no maps. Just you guessing left or right and probably choosing wrong. Oh, and light. You better have a flashlight and backups, plural. Caves eat light. It's not like walking through trees at night where you've got starlight or moonlight. Once you're a few steps in, it's black. Not dark. Black, as in can't see your own hand black. No fire's going to help much either unless you're at the entrance. Most caves are too damp and oxygen poor to keep a steady flame going deep inside. So now you're not just in danger, you're blind and scared and maybe stuck. And one more thing, caves can be hard to find again. Say you scout one out during the day, drop your gear, go looking for firewood or water, and come back after sunset. Good luck spotting that unmarked crevice or that gap between rocks in total darkness. Even with GPS, good luck pinning a pin on something as vague as a pile of boulders. You might pass right by it and never even realize it. Or worse, you might spot a different cave and walk into one that isn't safe at all. So yeah, I get the temptation. Caves feel like nature's ready-made shelter. But unless you know exactly what you're dealing with, or you've done your homework on cave safety, they're more like a gamble than a guarantee. You could win temporary cover, or you could lose big with wildlife, flooding, rock falls, toxic air, hypothermia, or getting hopelessly lost. There are better options out there. Trees, tarps, even digging a simple snow trench in winter than just blindly diving into a mystery hole in a rock wall and hoping for the best.
Climbing a tree is a safe way to escape predators. All right, picture this. You're out in the wild, maybe hiking or camping somewhere remote, and suddenly you hear something. A rustle, a growl. Your heart's doing backflips. You look up and boom, there's a tree. And your brain says, that's it, climb it, get up there, safety. I mean, it makes sense, right? Climbing a tree seems like the ultimate survival move. We've seen it in movies, cartoons, even nature shows. But here's the thing nobody tells you until it's too late. Climbing a tree to escape a predator, that's not always the safe move. In fact, it can get you killed even faster. Let's start with the animals themselves. You think bears can't climb? Wrong.
Black bears are excellent climbers. They'll scale that trunk like it's a playground jungle gym, and they're not slow about it either. If you think you've got time to scramble up while it lumbers behind you, think again. You're basically leading it right to you, just with less room to run away when it catches up. Grizzlies, sure, they're not as agile in trees, but even they can haul themselves a few feet up if they really want to, especially if you're dangling there like a snack piñata. And it's not just bears. Big cats, oh, they live for this. Leopards practically treat trees like lazy-boy recliners. Mountain lions, bobcats, they're strong, fast, and fully capable of chasing you right up that trunk. Climbing doesn't scare them. If anything, it just turns the chase into a vertical game. And spoiler, they're better at it than you. You might get 5 feet off the ground before your legs start shaking and your grip starts slipping. They'll be right behind you, silent and focused. Even smaller animals, think raccoons, snakes, large birds of prey, can either climb after you or reach you if you're not high enough. And let's be real. Are you really going to climb 20 feet up in a panic on uneven bark with no harness while carrying your backpack or gear? Probably not. You'll get a few feet up, maybe perch on a branch, heart racing, and hope whatever's chasing you gives up. But that's not strategy, that's desperation. And it rarely works out the way we imagine. Okay. Let's say you do manage to climb high enough and the predator loses interest. Now what? You're stuck in a tree. And no, that's not like chilling in a treehouse. That's hours of holding on to branches, trying not to cramp, balancing awkwardly, maybe with no food or water. Try sitting still in a tree for 5 hours while the sun beats down or the rain comes pouring in. It's exhausting. You can't sleep, you can't shift too much. One wrong move and boom, down you go. That's a broken leg or back waiting to happen. And then what? Now you're injured and out in the wild? And here's another uncomfortable truth. Falling is more likely than you think. Adrenaline might get you up the tree, but it won't keep you balanced when fatigue sets in. A wet branch, a slight slip, a moment of dizziness, and gravity takes over. Survival isn't about cinematic heroism. It's about staying alive in the long run. And a fall from even 10 feet up, especially onto rocks or uneven ground, can end the whole game. Let's also not ignore how limited your options become once you're up there. In a tree, you're visible, very visible. You're not hidden, especially not from animals that can smell or hear you. You're not exactly planning your next move either. You're waiting. Waiting for what? For the predator to wander off? For help? For night to fall? All of those just make your situation more dangerous. Trees don't give you control. They take it away. Now think about this from a practical perspective. What kind of tree are you even climbing? A pine tree? That's basically a spiky pole with sticky sap and brittle branches. A dense oak? Those are solid but hard to climb unless you're strong and know what you're doing. Wet bark? Moss-covered trunks? Twisted, thin branches? You're betting your life on something you probably haven't climbed since elementary school. The conditions are never as ideal as you imagine. Survival isn't a forest gym. It's a trap for the unprepared. And let's flip the situation. Let's say you're trying to escape not from a predator but from danger like a flood or an aggressive group of animals or rising water. Climbing might feel like the right move in those cases too. But trees don't make great towers. During storms, they sway hard. Lightning? Trees are prime targets. If you're clinging to a high branch during a thunderstorm, congratulations, you just became a human lightning rod.
not exactly the protection you were hoping for. Even if it's just wind, tall trees with heavy canopies are risky. Strong gusts can snap limbs or knock you off balance. You're not bolted in up there. You're relying on your own grip, your balance, and luck. Wind doesn't care about any of those. And then there's the emotional factor. Think about your headspace during all this. You're panicked. Your body's trembling. You're breathing fast, heart racing, probably on the edge of full-blown fight or flight. Now try making a calm, precise movement up a tree while in that state. It's the opposite of what your body's built for. This is not a movie. There's no heroic soundtrack. It's just you, sweaty palms, and the terrifying realization that you might have just made everything worse. The better move often is to stay low, stay calm, hide in brush, or slowly back away. Make yourself less interesting. Don't run, don't scream, don't clamber up the nearest tree like you're in an action film. That just turns you into a louder, clumsier target. Look, I get it. Trees feel safe, elevated, out of reach. But that instinct comes from cartoons and old survival tales, not real-world experience. The truth is way messier, way riskier. Climbing a tree might buy you time in some very specific situations, but most of the time, it just puts you in a worse spot, one where gravity, animals, weather, and fatigue all have the upper hand. So unless you trained in climbing, carrying gear meant for it, and know exactly what you're doing, leave the tree alone. Stay grounded. Use your brain, not the branches. In survival, smart beats dramatic every time.
You can use a mirror or shiny object anytime for rescue. So you're lost somewhere. Could be the mountains, a dense forest, maybe even stuck in the middle of a desert. You start going through your mental list of survival tricks, right? You remember something you saw in a movie or on a survival show. Someone pulled out a little mirror, aimed it at the sky, flashed it around, and bam, a helicopter swooped in to save them. Like some kind of shiny SOS magic. And now you're digging through your bag thinking, I've got my phone screen, I've got this piece of foil. That's got to work the same, right? But here's the kicker. Just having something shiny doesn't mean you're going to be rescued. It's not that simple. And if you're depending on this myth alone to get noticed, well, good luck with that. Let's start with the basic idea behind this trick. A signal mirror works by reflecting sunlight directly at a searcher, usually a pilot in the air or someone scanning the landscape. In theory, that bright flash stands out like a flare against natural backgrounds. And it can. But the key word here is can, not will. The mirror doesn't do the work for you. You have to aim it. Precisely. And aiming a signal mirror is surprisingly tricky. You need the sun. You need a clear line of sight. And you need to be able to hold your hand steady, point at a specific target, and catch their attention at just the right moment. If you're waving it around randomly, you're just throwing glitter at the sky and hoping someone notices. And speaking of sunlight, yeah, you kind of need it. Like a lot of it. Cloudy day? Good luck. Dense forest canopy overhead? The mirror might as well be a paperweight. Dawn or dusk? The angle of sunlight gets too low to reflect anything useful. Nighttime? Forget about it. That shiny compact mirror in your bag won't be summoning any helicopters after dark. If you're stuck in the jungle or surrounded by tall trees, even in the middle of the day, that canopy blocks direct sunlight. No sunlight means no reflection. And no reflection means you're just holding a fancy square with zero rescue value.
Now let's talk about the mirror itself. Not all shiny things work the same. Sure, your phone screen might reflect some light, so might a metal lid or the inside of an aluminum snack bag. But unless it's flat, smooth, and highly reflective, it's going to scatter light instead of focusing it into a beam. Real signal mirrors often have a hole in the center so you can sight your target. Yes, like aiming down a scope. There's a technique. You use the reflection of the sun to line up your target in the hole and bounce the light directly at them. It takes practice. You don't just flash it around randomly and hope for the best. And here's something else people don't think about. Are there even people out there to see your signal? A mirror doesn't summon rescuers from thin air. You could flash a perfect beam of sunlight for 10 hours straight, but if no one's looking in your direction, or if the search party hasn't even reached your area yet, it's useless. It's not a beacon. It's not a flare. It's passive. You're relying entirely on someone else happening to be in the right spot to catch it. And even then, it better stand out, because if it looks like a glint off rock or a trick of the light, they might just ignore it. Let's say you do manage to get a flash in someone's eyes. Planes fly fast. Drones buzz by. A single flash that lasts a second might not mean anything to a pilot scanning a wide terrain. You need to make it deliberate. 3 flashes in quick succession is the universal distress signal. But again, that requires aiming, requires focus, requires conditions being just right. That's a lot of ifs for something your life might depend on. And then there's the physical toll. Holding up your arm for extended periods while aiming a mirror, that gets exhausting fast. Your muscles shake, you start losing accuracy, the sun shifts angles. It's not sustainable. And if you're dehydrated, cold, or injured, good luck keeping that mirror perfectly aligned. It sounds so easy in theory. Just flash the mirror. But in practice, it's a full-time job that requires more precision than people realize. Now, let's flip the scenario. Imagine you're stuck in the snow. Super bright environment, tons of light. Mirror should work great, right? Well, yeah, but also the reflection might get lost in the glare. Everything is already shiny. The snow reflects sunlight like crazy, so your flash doesn't stand out. Same with water. If you're stranded at sea, bouncing a mirror off ocean waves is harder than it sounds. You're constantly moving, the surface is constantly shifting, and the sun is dancing across the waves like a disco ball. Try to stand out in that chaos. Not easy. What about using a flashlight instead, or your phone screen? Again, limited use. Flashlights don't work the same way as mirrors. They project light, but not with the same intensity or distance. Your phone light is great if someone's already close by, but it won't cut through miles of wilderness. Plus, it runs on battery, and you might need that phone for GPS, notes, or just holding on to hope. Using it as a strobe? Risky. Bottom line, a mirror can help. It really can, but only under very specific conditions. And it's not the universal survival cheat code people think it is. If you're going to carry one, a real, proper signal mirror, you better learn how to use it before you need it. And even then, it's just one tool in a bigger toolbox. You also need to be visible, make noise at the right time, build contrast, create movement, use smoke, color, shapes, anything to catch attention. Don't rely on that one shiny thing and think you're good to go. This myth comes from a place of truth. Mirrors have saved lives, but only when everything lined up. Sunlight, visibility, practice, timing, and luck. It's not the mirror that saves you. It's what you do with it and whether the world is in the right position to respond. You can dig your way out of an avalanche. So picture this. You're skiing, snowboarding, or maybe just hiking in the backcountry when suddenly it happens. The snow shifts, the slope gives way. You hear that rumble, and before you can even process what's going on, you're swallowed by a mountain of snow. Everything goes white. You're tumbling, spinning, your arms flailing, and then silence. Total stillness. You're buried. And somewhere in that adrenaline-fueled panic, a thought pops into your head. Okay, I just need to dig. I'll dig my way out, just like in the movies. Yeah, about that. This idea that you can just claw your way to the surface after being caught in an avalanche is one of those dangerous myths that sounds empowering, but might actually cost you your life. Because here's the brutal truth. Once you're buried under an avalanche, digging your way out is nearly impossible. Not just hard, nearly impossible. Let's break down why. First, there's the snow itself. You'd think it's soft and fluffy, right? Like the stuff you walk through or pack into a snowball. But avalanche snow isn't like that. When an avalanche slides down a mountain, it doesn't just lightly settle over you. It compacts, hard. Imagine concrete. That's what it's like. As it stops, all that snow compresses with the force of gravity and pressure. It locks together into a dense, heavy mass. You can't just push it aside like a blanket. It's more like being stuck in wet cement that hardens around you in seconds. And that snow? It's heavy. Every cubic meter of it can weigh 300 kilograms or more. That's like trying to bench press 4 grown adults off your chest. So even if your arms are free, and spoiler alert, they usually aren't, your movements are going to be incredibly limited. People often end up completely immobilized, with their limbs pinned at weird angles. You might not even be able to wiggle your fingers, let alone start a tunnel to freedom. But okay, let's say you're lucky. Somehow, you've got an air pocket. Maybe your arms are free. You still have a huge problem. You have no idea which direction is up. That's not just poetic, it's literal. In an avalanche, you tumble and spin so violently that your internal sense of direction gets completely scrambled. People have been found trying to dig up when they were actually digging sideways or even down, which only buries them deeper and wastes precious energy and air. Here's a creepy little fact. Avalanche survivors who died before rescue are often found in tight fetal positions, hands worn down from trying to claw through the snow. They dug and dug in the wrong direction, thinking they were saving themselves, but actually just speeding up their own suffocation. You don't want to be that person. That's not bravery, that's panic. And panic doesn't help you survive. You might be wondering, why is it so easy to believe this myth? It's the Hollywood effect. In movies, someone's trapped in snow. They struggle dramatically, gasp, and finally break through the surface with their hand. It's a triumphant, heroic moment. But that's not how real-life rescues work. Real avalanche victims are usually found because someone else saw it happen, used a beacon, or had avalanche rescue gear, not because they dug themselves out with pure grit and determination. The truth is, your best chance of surviving an avalanche doesn't come after you're buried. It comes before. Avoiding risky conditions, carrying the right gear, and knowing what to do the moment it starts moving, that's what actually saves lives. If you're in avalanche-prone terrain and you don't have a beacon, prod, and shovel on you, and someone with you who knows how to use them,
your odds drop drastically. Now, in the rare case that you are buried and somehow still conscious, yes, you can do a few things, but none of them involve digging a great escape tunnel. Your number one priority is preserving oxygen. Try to stay calm. Breathe slowly. If you have space, create an air pocket around your mouth. That's it. No flailing, no screaming, no frantic clawing. Just conserve. Because most avalanche deaths come from asphyxiation, not trauma. That means your survival window is measured in minutes, usually around 15 to 30, depending on how much air you have. After that, chances of survival start dropping fast. This is why avalanche beacons exist. If you've got one and your friends are trained to use theirs, they can find you quickly. Fast is the key word. A trained partner with the beacon, probe, and shovel can dig someone out in under 10 minutes. Without that, you're relying on luck, chance, and a rescue team that might be hours away. What's even more terrifying is that even if rescuers arrive fast, digging you out isn't fast. That snow has to be removed carefully because they don't want to collapse your air pocket or cause further injury. If you're a meter or two deep, and that's pretty shallow by avalanche standards, it can still take 5 to 10 minutes to reach you. That's why those first 15 minutes are so critical. And look, none of this is meant to be fear-mongering. It's just real talk. Knowing how avalanche rescues actually work is empowering because it helps you prepare. Myths like just dig your way out give people a false sense of security. They make you think, I'll figure it out. And that mindset, that's what actually gets people killed. Want a simple test to see if you're upside down under the snow? Spit. Yep, spit. See where gravity takes it. That can tell you which direction is truly down. It sounds gross, but it works. And if you're lucky enough to have some space to move, maybe you can reposition your body. But again, your priority isn't escape. It's oxygen. It's calm. It's waiting for rescue, not chasing it with blind panic. The bottom line is this. Getting buried in an avalanche is one of the scariest things that can happen in nature. And the idea that you'll just muscle your way out is a comforting fantasy. But survival isn't about fantasy. It's about preparation, knowledge, and realistic decisions. Don't count on your arms to save you once you're under. Count on your choices before it happens. That's where your power really is.
Let's say you're out in the wild, maybe hiking, maybe camping, and suddenly you spot it. A bear, or maybe a mountain lion, or some other large, teeth-bearing creature that definitely wasn't part of your itinerary. Your first instinct? Run. Just take off sprinting and hope your legs can carry you to safety. Because, hey, you're pretty fast, right? You did track in high school. You've got decent cardio. Maybe you even hit the gym now and then. You could outrun this thing, right? Well, here's the cold truth that your survival instincts might not want to hear. You absolutely cannot outrun a wild animal that wants to catch you. You just can't. And trying to do it might actually get you killed faster. Let's start with the basic math. You, as a regular human, can probably run somewhere between 10 to 15 miles per hour in a full sprint. Maybe if you're a trained athlete with adrenaline pumping, you could hit 20 miles per hour for a few seconds. But that's it. And that's on flat ground with good shoes and without tripping over rocks or roots or wet leaves. Now let's look at the competition. A grizzly bear? That fluffy tank of muscle can hit speeds of up to 35 miles per hour. And not just for a few steps. They can maintain that pace long enough to catch you before you even process what's happening. Mountain lions, same story. Fast, silent,
and powerful. Wolves can chase prey for miles without getting tired. Even animals you wouldn't expect, like moose or wild boars, can hit speeds over 30 miles per hour. You are absolutely not winning that race. Not today, not ever. But here's the kicker. Running doesn't just fail as an escape plan. It actually makes things worse. In the animal kingdom, sudden movement often triggers a chase response. It's instinct. You run, they chase. Not necessarily because they were planning to, but because you just activated something primal in their brain that says, hey, prey. So even if the animal wasn't initially interested in you, bolting might turn you into a target. Let's take bears, for example. A lot of bear encounters don't end in attacks. Bears are curious, sure, but they're not out there looking for humans to maul. In many cases, if you stay calm and avoid threatening them, they'll just move on. But the moment you run, now you look like a fleeing animal. And a fleeing animal is way more interesting than a still one. And don't even think about climbing a tree. That's another myth. Black bears, excellent climbers. Mountain lions, yeah, those too. If anything, going up just traps you in a worse spot, because now you're stuck, exhausted, and still in reach. What about zigzagging? You've probably heard that one for alligators or crocodiles, that you can escape by running in a zigzag. Well, that's kind of garbage too. Most animals are faster and more agile than you in any direction. If a crocodile wants you, zigzagging like a cartoon character isn't going to save you. But more importantly, most animals don't pursue prey long distances on land unless they're already engaged in the hunt. Which brings us back to the same point. Don't trigger the chase in the first place. Okay, so if running doesn't work, what the heck are you supposed to do? Well, it depends on the animal. Survival is all about knowing the right response for the right threat. With bears, for instance, standing your ground is often the safest option. Speak calmly. Don't make eye contact, but don't turn your back. Slowly back away. If it's a grizzly and it charges, your best bet might be to play dead. Lie flat, protect your neck, stay still. If it's a black bear, though, fight back. Seriously, make noise, wave your arms, throw rocks if you have to. It's counterintuitive, but black bears are more likely to be deterred by aggression. Mountain lions, same story. Don't run. Make yourself look big. Maintain eye contact, speak loudly, back away slowly. If it charges, fight like hell. They're ambush predators, and they're looking for an easy kill, not a noisy, aggressive target that might injure them. Wolves, stay calm. They're pack animals, and they size you up as a threat or not. Don't show fear. Don't run. Same deal. Look big, make noise, slowly retreat without turning your back. Even with smaller animals like wild dogs or boars, trying to sprint away often ends badly. Boars can accelerate shockingly fast and will charge with all their weight. And if you've ever seen footage of a wild dog chase, you know how that ends. Spoiler, not great for the human. So why does this myth persist? Honestly, it's part Hollywood, part human instinct. In every action movie, there's always that moment where someone sprints away from danger and miraculously escapes. They outrun explosions, bullets, wolves, dinosaurs, you name it. And we love to believe we'd be just as fast and lucky. But real life is not a Jason Bourne movie. You don't get dramatic music and slow motion. You get gravity, adrenaline, panic, and very limited options. Also, let's admit it, it feels right. When something terrifying shows up, our brain goes, get out of here now. It's a basic fight or flight response, and most people default to flight. But survival isn't about what feels right in the moment. It's about doing what works, even when it goes against your instincts. If you're headed into the wilderness, knowing how to handle animal encounters is crucial. Read up on the local wildlife, learn their behaviors, carry deterrents like bear spray, make noise on trails, and keep food sealed up and far from your sleeping area. Prevention is your best tool, because once you're face-to-face with a predator,
Your window for good decisions is tiny. And look, you might be fast. You might be proud of your 5K time or how you can sprint to catch a bus. But in the wild, speed isn't your savior. Smarts are. Don't try to out-athlete an animal that was built to kill with precision. They've had millions of years of evolution on their side. All you've got is what's in your head. So use it.
Shelter isn't necessary if it's not raining. So you're out in the wild. It's not raining. The sky looks chill. No dark clouds. No wind howling through the trees. It's just quiet and peaceful. Almost like nature's telling you, don't worry, you don't need shelter tonight. And maybe you're thinking, hey, this is great. I'll just lie under a tree, maybe build a little campfire and enjoy the stars. Shelter? Nah, I'm good. But here's the part no one tells you. Thinking like that can absolutely wreck your survival chances. Shelter is not just about staying dry. That's the myth. People think, if it's not raining or snowing, I don't need a roof over my head. But out there in nature, especially when you're in a survival situation, staying dry is only one small part of why shelter matters. Temperature, wind, dew, sun exposure, bugs, animals, terrain, all of it can mess you up if you ignore the one thing that could have protected you. A proper shelter. Let's start with temperature. You ever notice how warm it feels during the day and how insanely cold it gets at night? That's called diurnal temperature variation. Basically, nature's way of playing hot and cold. Even in the desert, where it could be blistering at noon, the temperature can drop below freezing at night. Now, imagine you're lying out there in a t-shirt thinking, well, it's dry, so I'm fine. And then slowly, your body starts losing heat. Not just comfort level heat, like actual core body temperature, the kind that, if it drops enough, leads to hypothermia. And here's the creepy part. You don't have to be freezing cold to get hypothermia. Even 50 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 degrees Celsius at night can do it, especially if there's a bit of wind and you're exposed. People have died from hypothermia in weather that felt chilly but not dangerous. Now toss in wind. Ever heard of wind chill? That's the thing where the actual air temperature might be 40 degrees Fahrenheit, but with wind, it feels like 25 degrees Fahrenheit on your skin. That's because moving air strips heat from your body way faster than still air. So even if it's not raining, even if it's not snowing, that gentle breeze, it's robbing you of warmth while you sleep. And if you're exposed, lying on the ground with nothing around you to block that air, it becomes a slow, steady drain on your energy. And speaking of the ground, that's another killer people don't think about. The earth pulls heat from you fast. You might think lying on the ground is no big deal, but it's basically like setting your body on a cold sponge. If you don't have insulation, like leaves, pine needles, a foam pad, even just clothing between you and the dirt, you'll start losing heat through conduction. Your body tries to maintain a normal temperature, but the cold ground says, nope, that's mine now. And all of a sudden, your sleeping in nature fantasy becomes a shivering, dangerous night. Let's flip it. What if it's not cold, but hot? No rain, no clouds, just sun. A lot of people think this is perfect weather for sleeping outside, except have you ever tried to sleep with the sun beaming down on your face for hours? Sunburns, dehydration, heat stroke. And guess what? You don't need to be running a marathon to get heat stroke. Just sitting or lying out in direct sun with no shade, especially if you're already low on water, can push your body into dangerous territory. Your shelter doesn't just keep you warm, it helps keep you cool when needed. Shade is survival. And then there's the dew.
Yeah, sounds harmless, right? Just a little moisture in the air. Except if you're sleeping exposed in an area with high humidity or near water. The dew can soak your clothing and gear while you sleep. So now you're waking up wet. And remember what we said about wet plus wind plus cool night air? Welcome back to the hypothermia party. Let's not forget the fun of bugs and animals. Mosquitoes, ants, ticks, spiders, they all love a warm, unprotected body lying out in the open. Ever tried sleeping while mosquitoes are buzzing in your ear every 5 seconds? Good luck staying alert or getting any real rest. Or worse, what about snakes, rodents, or even curious predators? Shelter isn't just about temperature. It's also about setting boundaries. It says, "This is my space. Stay out." And in the wild, a little boundary can make a big difference. And okay, let's say it really is a perfect night. No rain, no wind, not too hot, not too cold. Do you know what happens tomorrow? Weather changes fast. And if you don't already have a shelter set up, you might be scrambling in the middle of a storm, in the dark, exhausted and disoriented, trying to build one while soaking wet. That's not just uncomfortable, that's dangerous. Shelter is one of those things you always build before you need it. It's your insurance policy, because once you do need it and don't have it, it's too late. There's a reason why in survival training, shelter is always one of the first priorities, even before food, even sometimes before water. You can survive days without eating, but you can die overnight from exposure if conditions turn against you. It doesn't even have to be extreme. Just being cold, damp, and tired is enough to cloud your thinking. And once you stop thinking clearly, you make worse choices. Then you start spiraling. It all begins with skipping that one step, building shelter. So what counts as shelter? It doesn't have to be fancy. In a pinch, it could be a lean-to made with sticks and branches, a tarp strung between trees, even a hole in the ground with brush over it. Anything that blocks the wind, keeps you off the ground, and protects you from moisture or sun. And if you've got gear, like an emergency blanket or bivy sack, use it. Doesn't matter if it looks silly. Survival isn't about style points. It's about staying alive and staying sharp. So next time you're out there and you think, it's not raining, I don't need to build anything tonight, remind yourself, shelter isn't about what's happening right now. It's about what could happen. It's a bet on your own safety, and it's one you really don't want to lose.
Building a fire will always keep you warm and safe. You're cold, alone in the wild, and the sun's going down. What's the first thing that pops into your head? I gotta build a fire, right? It's the classic survival move. In every movie, show, or survival manual, building a fire is treated like the ultimate fix-it-all solution. Cold? Fire. Scared? Fire. Need to boil water? Fire. Want to keep animals away? Fire. Fire's the hero. But here's the truth no one really tells you. Fire isn't a magic solution. In fact, if you're not careful, it can actually make things worse. Let's start with the obvious. Sure, fire keeps you warm if you do it right, if you build it safely, if you manage it properly, if you have the right materials. That's a lot of ifs, isn't it? Because guess what? Fire's not that easy to build in real life. You're cold, your fingers are stiff, maybe it just rained and everything around you is wet. You try striking a match and poofed, it fizzles out in the wind. You gather wood, but it's damp. You forgot to look for dry kindling or didn't make a proper structure. Before you know it, you've burned through your last match and you're colder than before.
Now you're frustrated, freezing, and out of fire starting options. And even if you do get that fire going, there's another huge mistake people make. They treat it like a heater. They sit too close, thinking the closer they are, the warmer they'll be. But fire doesn't work like central heating. If you get too close, especially when your body's already cold, your surface warms up fast, but your core stays chilled. Your body thinks it's warm and stops shivering, but your internal temperature doesn't actually catch up. Then you move away from the fire, and boom, your body crashes and hypothermia kicks in even faster than before. Fire gives radiant heat, not deep core heat. It's a comfort, not a cure. Let's also talk about safety. You think fire equals protection. But a fire is like a big glowing signal saying, "Hey, I'm over here." That's great if you're trying to get rescued, but terrible if there are animals nearby, or worse, humans you don't want to run into. In some wilderness areas, especially remote or lawless regions, lighting a fire can expose you. The smell of smoke travels. The glow can be seen from far away. You're not just warming yourself up, you're announcing your location to anything or anyone with a nose or eyes. Also, if you don't build it right, like if you make it too big, too close to your shelter, under a tree, or near dry grass, congratulations, you've now created a wildfire starter kit. People think, "Oh, I'm careful," but all it takes is one gust of wind, one spark jumping to a dry branch, and suddenly your survival situation just turned into a disaster. Entire camps have gone up in flames because someone underestimated how far embers can travel. The wild doesn't care if it was an accident. Fire gets out of control fast. Here's something else. Fire eats fuel constantly. It doesn't stay alive on good vibes. If you think you can build a fire and then curl up and sleep all night, sorry, that's not how it works. You have to babysit that thing, feed it, monitor it, make sure it doesn't die or get too big. That means less rest, more energy spent, and even more exposure to cold if you're out of fuel and can't keep it going. Imagine burning your last bits of wood at midnight only for the flames to die out at 2 a.m. while you're sleeping. Now you're not just cold, you're surrounded by ashes with no backup plan. And don't forget the smoke. You ever sat too close to a campfire and had the smoke just follow you no matter where you move? Now picture that when you're already dehydrated, tired, and trying to rest. That smoke dries out your throat, stings your eyes, messes with your lungs. And if you build it in a poorly ventilated area, like inside a cave or a thick forest nook, you can actually suffocate or get carbon monoxide poisoning. Yes, people have literally died because they built a fire in the wrong place, thinking it would keep them safe. Even the idea that fire scares off animals is kind of a myth. Yes, it can keep some predators at bay, animals that aren't used to it, like wolves or certain big cats. But not all animals are afraid of fire. In some regions, bears are attracted to smoke or the smell of food cooking over flames. Rodents and insects might crawl closer, drawn by the warmth. And if you left food scraps near the fire pit, congratulations again! You just set up a dinner bell for the wild. Let's also not forget, fire takes time and energy. If you're lost, injured, or low on supplies, you might not have the luxury to gather enough dry wood, build the structure, light it properly, and maintain it for hours. It's not just about sparking a flame. It's about committing to a cycle of work, attention, and maintenance. And that might not be the smartest use of your limited strength. So, what's the smarter play? Use fire strategically, not emotionally. If you know how to make one safely, reliably, in a good spot, go for it. But don't treat it like a survival god. Think of it more like a tool than a lifesaver. It helps dry clothes, cook food, boost morale, and signal for help. But it's not the first thing you should do the second you feel cold. Your body, your shelter, your layers of clothing, those are what keep you alive. Fire is the bonus, not the baseline. And look, we get it. Fire feels like power. There's something primal about it. It makes it feel like you're in control, even when everything else is falling apart. But in the wild, that kind of thinking can be deadly. Comfort doesn't equal safety. Just because a fire makes you feel better doesn't mean it actually improves your survival chances. Not if you don't respect it, prepare for it, and know when not to use it. So next time you're out in nature, remember that fire is not always the answer. Sometimes staying dry, insulated, and hidden is way smarter. Know your environment, know your options. And if you do make a fire, make it small, make it safe. And for the love of survival, don't let it make you overconfident.
Lightning doesn't strike the same place twice. You've probably heard someone say it before. Don't worry, lightning never strikes the same place twice. It's one of those old sayings people throw out to make you feel better when things go wrong, like it's the law of nature. Got hit with bad luck? No problem, it can't possibly happen again. Except that's totally wrong. Not only can lightning strike the same place twice, it does it all the time. Especially in survival situations, believing this myth could actually put you in serious danger. Let's start with how lightning actually works. Lightning isn't some random force that's just bouncing around the sky looking for fresh new targets. It's a high-energy electrical discharge that follows the path of least resistance to the ground. So, if something makes an easy path, like a tall tree, a mountaintop, a metal pole, or even your own body if you're in the wrong spot, that's where it's going to go. And if that tall tree or metal pole is still standing after the first strike, yeah, it can absolutely get hit again, maybe within minutes, maybe even during the same storm. Think about the Empire State Building. That thing gets hit by lightning dozens of times a year. One storm alone could strike it multiple times in a matter of seconds. That's not a freak accident. That's physics. Tall, isolated structures attract lightning because they shorten the distance between the ground and the cloud. So when someone says lightning doesn't strike twice, they're literally ignoring every skyscraper, every mountain ridge, and every storm data log that's ever been collected. Now imagine you're in a survival situation, hiking alone in the backcountry. Maybe the weather turns fast, thunder starts rumbling, and rain is coming down in sheets. You find shelter near a tall tree or a rock outcrop, thinking, it already got hit once, so you're safe now. That false sense of security is exactly what gets people hurt. Just because lightning struck once doesn't mean it's done with that spot. If it was a good conductor of electricity 5 minutes ago, guess what? It still is. And even worse, if you decide to take shelter under something that looks like it was already hit, like a scorched tree or a metal sign that's partially blackened, you're actually putting yourself in a prime strike zone. Lightning loves return customers. The charred tree is still tall, still conductive, and still perfectly positioned to take another blast. People don't survive because lightning moved on. They survive because they avoided being in the wrong place when it comes back. Here's where it gets wild. Lightning doesn't even need to hit something directly to hurt you. There's something called ground current. When lightning strikes the earth and that electric energy spreads out along the surface, if you're anywhere nearby, especially if you're lying down or touching the ground with multiple points of your body, that current can travel through you. That's why people in lightning-prone areas are taught to squat low, feet together, arms off the ground, to minimize contact and reduce the chance of current flow. Doesn't matter if it struck you last time or your hiking buddy. If you're close, you're still at risk.
A lot of folks also think once lightning hits something and doesn't cause a fire or immediate damage, it's spent, like it used up all its energy in one dramatic zap. But lightning doesn't work like a battery draining down. It's a chain reaction of energy, not a one-time blast. If conditions in the sky haven't changed and the path to the ground is still conductive, lightning can keep hitting the same place as long as the storm's overhead. Same cloud system, same electrical potential, same target, over and over. Now here's the part that really matters if you're trying to survive in the wild. Believing this myth can influence where you go, where you hide, and how cautious you are during a storm. You might think, oh, that spot's already been hit, it's safe now. But what you're really doing is making decisions based on a saying instead of science. Lightning doesn't care about sayings. It only cares about charge, elevation, and resistance. Let's say you set up camp in a wide open field. There's one single tall tree nearby. During the night, lightning strikes it. Big crack, massive flash. The ground shakes. Scary, right? But then you think, okay, that was terrifying, but at least it already got hit, so I'll stay near it now because lightning doesn't strike twice. That's how people get killed. That exact tree could be hit again, especially if the storm isn't done yet. Your brain might want to believe you've dodged the danger, but the storm doesn't owe you anything. The truth is, if you see lightning hit something, that's a warning, not a safety signal. That's nature pointing and saying, hey, this is where I like to send power. It's the opposite of safety. You should be moving away from it, not toward it. Also, it's worth noting that a person can be struck by lightning more than once. There's actual documented cases. One guy, Roy Sullivan, was struck 7 different times and survived all of them. That's not because he was cursed or chasing storms. It's because he worked in areas where lightning strikes were more common and ended up in risky spots repeatedly. Same person, same location types, and same weather patterns, and yep, lightning came back. And here's something almost nobody talks about. Even if lightning doesn't hit the exact inch, it can hit the same general area. So if you were standing in a field where lightning hit 50 feet away, and then you move 10 feet over, you're still in the danger zone. It doesn't have to be a literal repeat of the last strike point. It just has to follow that same electric path. In a survival scenario, all of this comes down to one thing. Don't play games with lightning. Don't try to outthink it using folklore. Don't assume you're safe because of what happened 10 minutes ago. If you're out in the open, get low. Avoid tall trees, ridges, and lone structures. Don't huddle in groups. Spread out to minimize risk. Stay off metal. And for the love of all things logical, don't assume the storm is done with any particular spot. Lightning is unpredictable, but it follows patterns. It follows physics. And yes, it absolutely 100% strikes the same place twice, sometimes 3 times, sometimes 100. So next time someone throws that old line at you, maybe smile and say, actually, it does, and I'd rather not find out the hard way.
Rain means you're safe from forest fires. So it starts raining while you're hiking in the woods, and you breathe a sigh of relief. The air smells fresh, the trees are glistening, and your brain instantly tells you, well, at least I don't have to worry about wildfires anymore, right? Rain puts out fire. That's what we've all been taught. Except, it's not that simple. In fact, believing that rain makes you completely safe from wildfires might be one of the most dangerously misleading assumptions you can make in the wild. Because fire, especially forest fire, doesn't care if it just rained for 10 minutes or an hour, sometimes even a day. If the conditions are right, fire can still spark,
and spread long after the clouds have cleared. Let's unpack this. First off, rain doesn't magically erase fire danger. It depends on how much rain actually falls, how long it lasts, and what the landscape was like before the rain showed up. If you're in an area that's been dry for weeks or even months, we're talking drought-level dryness, a light sprinkle isn't going to change much. The top layer of soil might get wet, sure, but the grasses, the leaves, the underbrush, the dead wood scattered all over the forest floor, still dry underneath, still very flammable. Think of it like a sponge that's been left out too long. You pour a little water on it, and it just sits there on the surface. The inside stays bone dry. There's something called the fuel moisture index that firefighters actually track. It tells you how much moisture is in the stuff that can catch fire, like twigs, leaves, logs. If that number is low, that means the material is ready to burn, even if it's a bit damp on the outside. Rain can raise that number, but only temporarily, and only if it's heavy and consistent. A quick rainstorm might actually lull people into a false sense of security. You think, it's wet now, fire season must be over. Meanwhile, underneath those trees, that fire danger is still smoldering, sometimes literally. And here's the kicker. Even if there is a wildfire burning already, rain doesn't always put it out. You'd think it would, right? Water versus fire, classic showdown. But wildfires are stubborn. They generate their own heat, their own wind patterns, even their own weather systems when they get big enough. A little rain might dampen the flames or reduce the smoke for a while, but it often doesn't reach the core of the fire, especially if it's burning underground through root systems or deep forest litter. Some wildfires keep going under the surface for days or even weeks after rain has fallen. You'll think it's gone, and then it pops back up again somewhere else, creeping out from under a log, ready to explode when the wind shifts. And then there's something called a holdover fire. This one's sneaky. It happens when a fire starts, maybe from lightning, but doesn't immediately flare up. It might smolder quietly, almost invisibly under some bark or deep in a dry stump. Even if it rains, the fire can survive. It just waits. Then, once conditions dry out again, a sunny day, a little breeze, boom, full-blown wildfire, and you had no idea it was even there. That's why lightning-caused fires are so dangerous in remote areas. They don't always go dramatic right away. They sit, they hide, and then when you think you're safe, they go full beast mode. But let's say the rain really was heavy, a good soaking. Great, right? Safer now? Yes and no. Rain doesn't just affect fire, it also affects terrain. In areas where wildfire has already passed through, heavy rain can actually make things worse. See, when a fire burns vegetation, it leaves behind this hydrophobic layer on the soil. That means the ground literally repels water. So when it rains, the water doesn't soak in, it runs off fast. That leads to flash floods, landslides, and mud flows, especially on steep hillsides. So now, even though the fire is out, you're dealing with a whole new survival threat. You survived the flames, sure, but now the ground beneath you might collapse or wash out. That's the brutal chain reaction of nature. Fire, then flood. And here's something else people don't realize. Rain can actually start fires. I know that sounds completely backwards, but stay with me. During thunderstorms, lightning is often accompanied by rain, but not always heavy rain. There's something called a dry lightning storm. It happens when lightning strikes during a storm that produces little to no precipitation on the ground. The lightning hits a tree, sparks a fire, and there's not enough moisture to put it out. So you might hear thunder and feel a few drops and think, phew, fire danger's over. Meanwhile, you've just entered one of the most fire-prone scenarios in nature. The rain might also make you lower your guard. Maybe you were being careful before, watching your campfire, double-checking your gear, staying alert for smoke. But now that it's raining, you feel relaxed. So you build a fire under a tarp or near some trees because it's wet out. What's the risk? But if that fire spreads and the ground cover is still dry underneath, you've just created a potential disaster. Rain doesn't eliminate personal responsibility. It just makes people feel like the rules no longer apply, which is exactly when accidents happen. Also, and this one's huge, just because it's raining here doesn't mean it's raining everywhere. Wildfires are often started by weather happening miles away. Rain in your immediate area might mean nothing if the next valley over is bone dry, windy, and loaded with fuel. A fire can start out there and travel fast. Wind pushes embers for miles. So unless you're looking at a regional weather map, don't assume a bit of drizzle where you're standing means you're in the clear. It's like standing on the edge of a storm and assuming you're safe because you haven't been hit yet. Survival is about caution, not comfort. If you're in a forest during fire season, rain is a temporary gift, not a permanent shield. It gives you a little breathing room, a little moisture to work with, but it's not a magic off switch. Respect it for what it is, a short-term advantage, not a long-term solution. If you're lost or camping in a fire-prone area and it starts to rain, yes, be glad, but don't get lazy. Stay alert. Stay cautious. Don't camp near burned trees that could fall. Don't assume the smoke is gone forever. Don't hike into areas you assume are safe just because they're wet. The truth is, rain doesn't mean you're safe from forest fires. Sometimes it just means they're sleeping.
If it's sunny, hypothermia isn't a risk. The sun's out. Your jacket's off. Maybe you're even sweating a little. Everything feels fine, comfortable, warm enough. So the idea that you could be at risk of hypothermia? It sounds ridiculous, right? That's winter stuff. Snowy mountains, blizzards, frozen lakes. Not this sunny afternoon hike. Not this beach camping trip. But here's the thing nobody tells you. Hypothermia doesn't care if the sun is shining. It doesn't care if the sky is blue or the temperature is a cozy 60 degrees Fahrenheit. What matters isn't just the number on the thermometer. It's how fast your body is losing heat. And you'd be shocked how quickly that can happen, even in good weather. Let's say you fall into a cold river while hiking. It's sunny out, sure. But that water is still near freezing. It zaps your body heat instantly. Within minutes, your core temperature starts dropping. And once your clothes are wet, they cling to your skin and keep sucking away warmth like a sponge. Now you're wet. Maybe the breeze picks up, and suddenly your body can't keep up. You start shivering, not because it's cold outside, but because your internal engine is trying desperately to keep your organs warm. That's hypothermia, beginning. In the sunshine, on a perfectly nice day. And here's the kicker. Once you get hypothermic,
Your judgment starts slipping. You stop realizing you're in danger. People in the early stages of hypothermia often say things like, "I'm fine. I'm just a little tired." They might even stop shivering, and that's not a good sign. That usually means their body has given up trying to warm itself. And when you mix that with the mental fog that sets in, the danger ramps up fast. You might make bad choices, like taking off clothes because you feel hot, even though you're freezing from the inside out. It's called paradoxical undressing, and it happens more often than people think. Now let's talk about wind. You ever stood in a breeze right after swimming? Even on a warm day, that wind cuts right through you. It speeds up the evaporation of moisture from your skin, and evaporation means heat loss. So if you're hiking on a sunny ridgeline, a little sweaty from the climb, and then you stop to rest in the wind, your body starts cooling off way faster than you expect. And if the sun dips behind a cloud, or you're in the shade of a canyon wall, that perfect temperature can feel icy real quick. Deserts, also a trap. Everyone thinks deserts are only dangerous because of heat stroke and dehydration. But deserts get cold fast. As soon as the sun goes down, the dry air doesn't hold warmth and temperatures plummet. People camping in deserts without proper gear often wake up in the middle of the night shaking uncontrollably. They were wearing shorts and a t-shirt at sunset, and by midnight, they're curled in a ball, losing body heat like crazy. Even without rain, without snow, without cold weather, hypothermia strikes. Even beaches, sunny beaches, can be risky. Think about those people who go surfing early in the morning. The water is cold, the wind is blowing, and even if they're wearing wetsuits, they can get chilled over time. If something goes wrong, like getting caught in a rip current and swept far from shore, you're suddenly in a situation where your body is losing heat rapidly. Doesn't matter how nice the sky looks. The sun can't help you if your body is working against itself to stay warm. And let's not forget elevation. The higher you go, the thinner the air, and the cooler it gets, even if the sun is strong. Mountain hikers often start off warm, sweating even, but once they stop moving, to eat, to rest, to set up camp, their wet clothes start cooling them down way too quickly, add a light breeze, and boom, you're sitting in the sun, but your body's heat is draining fast. People have gone hypothermic in the middle of the day on hikes they thought were easy because they didn't factor in wind chill, wet layers, or exhaustion. There's also this false sense of security that comes with sunlight. People don't prepare properly. They skip bringing a jacket because it's warm right now. They forget extra socks. They don't think about changing out of their wet clothes. The problem is, survival isn't about the temperature you feel in the moment. It's about what happens when conditions shift. If you fall, if you stop moving, if the wind picks up, if the sun sets, all that comfort can disappear in a flash, and you'll be left with a body struggling to retain its core heat. And once your body drops below 95 degrees Fahrenheit, hypothermia is officially in motion. Mild at first, shivering, confusion, clumsiness, then moderate, slurred speech, muscle stiffness, stumbling, then severe. No shivering, weak pulse, unconsciousness. People can and do die from hypothermia in conditions that seem totally harmless just hours before. So the myth that sunshine equals safety? Completely wrong. Hypothermia isn't a cold weather problem. It's a heat loss problem. And the sun, while it feels good, isn't always enough to protect you. Especially if you're wet. Especially if you're tired.
especially if you're not prepared. Bottom line, don't let sunny weather trick you into thinking your body's invincible. Respect your environment. Pack the extra layer. Stay dry when you can. And always remember, warmth isn't just about the temperature outside. It's about keeping your internal fire going, no matter what the sky looks like.
Deserts are only dangerous because of heat. When people think desert, they usually picture one thing: blistering heat, the sun beating down like a spotlight, cracked, dry ground, mirage-like waves of heat shimmering on the horizon. And yeah, that's definitely one part of the desert experience. But here's where the myth creeps in. The idea that heat is the only thing you need to worry about in a desert is not just wrong, it's dangerously wrong. Deserts are deceptive. And if you go in thinking you're only fighting sunburn and thirst, you're way more likely to get hurt, lost, or worse. Let's start with the most overlooked danger: the cold. Yep, cold. Same desert, same sand. Just a few hours later, and the temperature can drop like a rock. It's not uncommon for deserts to swing from over 100 degrees Fahrenheit during the day to near freezing at night. Why? Because there's almost no moisture in the air. Water vapor holds on to heat, and deserts are bone dry. So once the sun goes down, there's nothing to trap the warmth. It just escapes into the sky, and suddenly that place that felt like an oven turns into a walk-in freezer. If you don't have proper gear, like a jacket, insulated sleeping bag, or even just long sleeves, you're going to feel it hard. Hypothermia in the desert is a real thing, and it catches people off guard all the time. Now let's talk about terrain. Deserts aren't just flat sand dunes. Some of them are rocky, with sharp ridges, loose gravel, deep gullies and cliffs. Navigation gets tricky fast. GPS might not always work. The heat messes with your phone. And if you're walking across terrain that all looks the same, endless brown hills, similar-looking shrubs, you can get turned around without realizing it. Compasses can be unreliable if you're in areas with heavy iron deposits in the ground. People wander in circles without knowing it. It's not like getting lost in a forest, where you might at least follow a stream or find landmarks. In deserts, everything can look like a copy-paste nightmare. And then there's the wildlife. Most folks don't realize just how many venomous or dangerous creatures call deserts home. Snakes, scorpions, spiders. They're pros at hiding under rocks and sand during the day, and they get more active at night. The same time you might be trying to sleep on the ground or reach into a crevice for shelter. One wrong move, one unlucky hand placement, and boom! You're dealing with venom, swelling, and pain. And guess what? You're probably far from help. No hospitals, no antivenom, maybe not even cell signal. Not to mention larger animals like coyotes or wild dogs, which may not usually bother people, but if they're desperate for food, or if you stumble across a den, things can get tense fast. You ever heard of flash floods in the desert? Sounds like a joke, right? How can something so dry flood? But it happens, and when it does, it's terrifying. The ground in deserts is so dry and compacted that it doesn't absorb water easily. So when a thunderstorm rolls through, even if it's miles away, the rain runs off fast and gathers into canyons, ravines, and washes. These channels, which might have looked totally dry when you set up camp,
can turn into raging rivers in minutes. People have been swept away by walls of water that came from storms they never even saw. You might hear a rumble, then a trickle, then boom, a 6-foot wall of debris-filled floodwater is barreling toward you. By then, it's often too late to climb out. And don't forget, dehydration isn't just about heat. It can hit you in cold weather too, especially in the desert. Why? Because your body loses moisture just from breathing dry air. Every exhale carries away water vapor. You don't notice it as much because you're not sweating buckets, but you're still drying out. That's why desert survival requires constant hydration and not just when you feel thirsty. If your lips are cracking and your pee is dark yellow or non-existent, you're already on the edge. Another overlooked factor? Sun exposure and radiation. In deserts, the sun reflects off pale sand or rock, so even if you're wearing a hat, you're still getting roasted from below. Sunglasses help, but UV rays bounce everywhere. Sunburn happens fast, and on parts of your body you didn't even expect. The backs of your legs, under your chin, the inside of your nose. And too much sun exposure doesn't just burn you. It weakens your immune system, it drains your energy, and it increases your risk of heat stroke. And don't even get started on trying to sleep after a full-body sunburn. Let's also talk about the mental game. Deserts are psychologically brutal. The sameness, the silence, the feeling of isolation, it messes with your head. You might start seeing mirages. You lose track of distance. You walk for hours thinking rescue must be just over the next ridge, and it never is. That kind of frustration, that hopelessness that starts to creep in, leads people to make reckless decisions, like abandoning their gear to move faster, or splitting up from a group to find help. That's when things spiral. Even food can be a trap. You might think, I'll be fine, I brought some snacks. But carrying salty food without enough water is a recipe for faster dehydration. And eating in the desert actually increases your water needs. Your body has to process those calories, and digestion takes moisture. So if you're rationing water, sometimes not eating is smarter. But again, most people don't know that. They eat the granola bar, get thirstier, drink their last bottle, and now they're stuck with dry lips and dry options. And finally, rescue isn't easy. A lot of deserts are huge, like mind-bendingly vast. Planes can't always spot you easily because there's no contrast between you and the ground. Your shiny survival blanket might not help if you're lying on reflective sand. Your fire signal? Hard to see in bright daylight. And cell towers? Forget it. So when something goes wrong in the desert, you're often truly on your own. So yeah, deserts are hot. That part's not a lie. But heat is just the opening act. The real danger lies in everything else people don't think about. The cold, the terrain, the wildlife, the floods, the silence, the mental fatigue. That's why underestimating a desert is so dangerous. You go in with the wrong idea, and the place doesn't have to do much to prove you wrong.
You can dig into snow for warmth and be totally safe. Okay, so you're stranded in a snowy wilderness, it's freezing, your fingers are numb, and the wind is howling like some kind of angry ghost. You remember something you saw in a survival show, or maybe read online. If you dig into the snow, you'll be warmer. Sounds smart, right? Like, snow is cold, but if you're inside it, somehow it insulates you? Well, kinda. That's one of those survival tips that's partly true, but way more dangerous than it sounds if you don't understand the full picture. Digging into the snow for warmth can actually kill you, and a lot of people don't realize why until it's too late. Let's start with the insulation part. Yes, snow is technically an insulator. It traps air, and air slows down the loss of body heat. So if you dig a snow cave or burrow, and you do it right, it can create a sort of bubble that holds your body warmth better than just sitting in the wind. But here's where it gets sketchy. Most people have no idea how to build one correctly. You can't just dig a random hole in a snowbank and expect to survive the night like a mountain ninja. The thickness, shape, airflow, and location all matter. A badly built snow shelter can turn into a freezing tomb really fast. The biggest mistake? No ventilation. Snow blocks wind, sure, but it also blocks oxygen. If you dig yourself a little snow hole, crawl in, and seal it up tight to keep out the cold, guess what? You're sealing in your own carbon dioxide. Your body's still breathing, but there's nowhere for the CO2 to go. Within hours, sometimes even less, you can pass out from lack of oxygen without realizing it. People have literally suffocated in their own snow shelters because they thought they were being smart. That little warm cave, it becomes an airtight trap. You need an air vent or chimney to allow fresh air to come in and bad air to go out. But when your hands are frozen and visibility is low, that kind of design is easier said than done. Another huge danger? Collapse. Snow is heavy, like really heavy. A cubic foot of snow can weigh anywhere from 10 to 30 pounds, depending on how dense and wet it is. That's fine when it's on the ground, but when you start hollowing it out and crawling under it, you're messing with structure. If the roof of your snow cave isn't arched properly or isn't thick enough, it can collapse on you. Not dramatically like in the movies, just a quiet, slow crush that traps you under a few feet of snow. And once you're buried, moving becomes almost impossible. You can't dig up, you can't scream. Snow absorbs sound. Even someone a few feet away might not hear you. And now you're in a freezing coffin, and no one knows you're there. And here's another thing. Snow is cold. Shocking, I know, but seriously, people forget that even if it's insulating, it's still ice. The walls of your snow shelter are going to be literally freezing. If you don't have insulation between you and the snow, like a sleeping pad, pine branches, or even your backpack, you're going to be in direct contact with ice-cold surfaces. That draws heat from your body like a sponge. You might feel warm at first because you're out of the wind, but as your body heat gets sucked into the snow, hypothermia can creep in without warning. Your core temperature drops, your thinking gets fuzzy, and you might start stripping off clothes because of something called paradoxical undressing, where the brain gets confused and thinks you're overheating. That's when things go from dangerous to deadly. Let's say best case scenario, you actually build a decent snow cave. Nice and compact, good airflow, no immediate danger of collapse. That's still not a long-term solution. Why? Because moisture builds up. Your breath adds humidity. If you're sweating or have snow on your clothes, that water vapor sticks to the inside walls of the cave and starts dripping. Everything gets damp. Your gear, your clothes, the floor. And when you're damp, in freezing temperatures, you lose heat faster than if you were dry in the wind. Wet clothes kill. Slowly. Miserably. That cozy cave? Now it's a cold, soggy mess that increases your chance of frostbite and pneumonia.
There's also the psychological trap. People dig into snow and get a false sense of security. I'm safe now, they think. So they stop signaling for help. They stay put too long. They don't watch for weather changes or falling snowpack around them. They hunker down and wait. And sometimes no one's looking for them yet. Or rescuers were close, but missed them entirely because they were hidden under a snowbank with no visible trace. It's one thing to shelter temporarily during a blizzard, but if you dig in without a plan to get out, you're relying on luck and time, and those things tend to run out fast in survival situations. And let's be honest, building a snow cave takes a ton of energy. You're cold, tired, maybe already dehydrated, and now you're shoveling snow for an hour trying to carve out a shelter. That burns calories and saps your strength. If you overexert and start sweating, now you're even more vulnerable. Sweating inside winter clothes is like carrying an ice pack against your skin. You want to avoid sweating at all costs in freezing conditions. Sometimes, trying to build the perfect snow shelter actually makes your situation worse. So, what's the better move? If you're in a snowy survival situation and truly need shelter, yes, digging into snow can work, but it has to be done with full awareness of the risks. It's not a magic trick. You need ventilation. You need structural awareness. You need insulation between you and the snow. You need a backup plan, and you need to keep signaling for help. If you don't have the tools or time to make a proper shelter, it might be safer to just find a windbreak, like a tree well, rock outcropping, and use what gear you have to insulate and stay dry. Staying dry beats being buried. So next time you hear someone say, "Don't worry, just dig into the snow and you'll be fine," remember, snow isn't cozy. Snow doesn't care. It's not a soft blanket. It's frozen water that can freeze, crush you, or suffocate you if you're not careful. Respect it, understand it, and never assume you're totally safe just because you've tunneled in.
Hiding under trees during a storm is safe. All right, let's paint the scene. You're out in the wilderness. Dark clouds are rolling in, and suddenly it's pouring rain. Thunder's cracking, winds howling, and the lightning. It's getting way too close for comfort. Naturally, your instincts kick in. Find shelter. And look, there's a tree. Big, sturdy, leafy. Perfect umbrella, right? Just duck underneath and wait it out. It feels like the safest move you can make. But here's the thing. Hiding under trees during a storm, that's actually one of the most dangerous places you can be. Let's talk about lightning for a second. It's not picky. It's not looking for the tallest building or the most dramatic landscape. It's just trying to find the fastest path to the ground. And guess what trees are? Giant natural lightning rods. They're full of moisture. They reach toward the sky, and they're often the tallest object around. That's like an open invitation to a lightning bolt saying, "Hey, strike me." If you're underneath when that happens, yeah, not good. Now, you might think, okay, but if the lightning hits the tree, I'll just be next to it, right? I won't be the one getting struck. That's where a lot of people get this completely wrong. Because when lightning hits a tree, the electricity doesn't just go straight down through the trunk. It spreads out. It travels through the roots, the ground, the air around it. It can jump, literally arc outward from the trunk and zap anything nearby. That includes you, especially if you're touching the tree or sitting close to its base. That's called a side flash, and it's one of the most common ways people get injured or killed by lightning without being directly struck.
There's also something called ground current. When lightning strikes a tree, the energy doesn't stop at the roots. It radiates out into the surrounding ground. So if you're standing near the base, say under the leafy part for shelter, some of that energy travels up through your feet and through your body. It doesn't care what shoes you're wearing. Rubber soles won't save you. That jolt can stop your heart, mess with your nervous system, or just knock you clean out. And even if it doesn't kill you instantly, you could be left paralyzed or unable to call for help. And it gets worse. Trees explode, literally. When lightning hits a tree with a lot of moisture inside, which most healthy trees have, the sudden surge of energy boils that water instantly. We're talking steam explosion. Bark goes flying, limbs snap off, entire trunks can split open. That tree you're hugging for cover, it turns into a bomb. You don't even have to be touching it to get impaled by flying wood. There are countless reports of people injured not by the lightning, but by the shrapnel from a blasted tree. But even if you get lucky and the lightning skips your tree, you're still not exactly in the clear. Rainstorms often come with strong winds, and big trees with heavy branches, those things break, especially if the tree is already weak or diseased. People have been crushed to death by falling limbs that came down without warning. A branch doesn't need to be enormous to be deadly, just heavy enough to knock you unconscious or pin you down. Imagine trying to survive in the wild with a broken leg or head injury, all because you thought a tree looked cozy. Now you might ask, well, what am I supposed to do then? Good question. If you're caught in a storm, your best bet is actually to avoid tall, isolated trees completely, especially the lone ones standing out in open areas. They're lightning magnets. Instead, look for low ground, not valleys that could flood, but gentle depressions, bushes, rocks, things that offer some cover without sticking up like a lightning target. Crouch down if the storm's right on top of you. Feet together, hands off the ground, head low. The goal is to minimize your contact with the earth and make yourself as small as possible, while also not lying flat. And if you're in a forest, try to stay away from the tallest trees, especially the ones standing alone. You want to be among smaller vegetation, in a dense cluster where no single tree is likely to attract all that electricity. Still not perfect, but safer than cozying up to the biggest trunk in sight. This myth about hiding under a tree for safety is super common because honestly, it feels right. It's raining, we're wired to avoid getting soaked, we associate trees with shelter, with protection. But when lightning's involved, your instincts can betray you. What looks like the safest spot could be the one that gets you killed. So yeah, that giant oak that's been around for 100 years, it doesn't care how scared or cold or tired you are. If it takes a direct hit and you're hiding under it, you're not just in danger. You're in the worst possible spot. Sometimes in survival, the things that seem smart are exactly the ones that'll get you hurt. So if the storm hits and your first thought is, let's go stand under that tree, stop yourself. Find a safer spot. Get low, stay alert, and remember, nature's beautiful, but it doesn't play favorites.
Clouds always mean a storm is coming. Have you ever looked up at the sky, see a bunch of clouds rolling in, and immediately think, well, better find cover, a storm's coming? Yeah, you're not alone. Most of us grew up being told clouds mean bad weather. We associate dark skies with thunder, rain, even disaster. But here's the deal. Just because there are clouds in the sky doesn't mean Mother Nature is gearing up to wreck your day. In fact, that belief can backfire hard in a survival situation. Let's break it down. Clouds come in a whole menu of types. Some are fluffy, innocent little cotton balls just chilling in the atmosphere. Others are tall, dark, and scary looking, but they're not always out to get you. It's all about what kind of clouds you're seeing, how they're moving, how high they are, and what the conditions around them are like. You can't just glance up, see gray, and assume chaos is incoming. That's like hearing one loud noise in the kitchen and deciding the whole house is on fire. There's a type called stratus clouds. These are the flat, layered ones that can cover the whole sky like a giant gray sheet. They might look gloomy, but they're often harmless. Yeah, they can bring some drizzle or light rain, but most of the time they're just floating up there, doing their thing, keeping the sun away. Then there are cumulus clouds, those big puffy clouds that look like mashed potatoes or cartoon sheep. They're usually a sign of fair weather. Even if they get tall and kind of dramatic, they're not necessarily packing thunder or lightning. Now, the ones you do need to watch out for are called cumulonimbus clouds. These are the skyscrapers of the cloud world. They go up miles into the sky. And yeah, these do mean business. Lightning, hail, strong winds, even tornadoes. But here's the twist. By the time you see one fully formed above you, the storm is probably already starting. So if you're relying on cloud equals storm, you're reacting too late. And if you panic every time you see clouds, you'll waste energy, take unnecessary detours, or even make dumb decisions to avoid weather that never actually arrives. This myth really messes with people who are lost or trying to plan their next move. Like you might be trying to decide whether to climb that ridge, cross that river, or build a shelter. You look up, see the sky getting hazy, and immediately think, nope, storm's coming, I better hunker down. But what if it's just morning fog burning off, or a harmless cloud front passing through? You might waste hours sitting still, miss your window to move, or run out of daylight, all because you treated clouds like a storm siren instead of what they are, just water vapor hanging out. Here's another twist. In some environments, clouds can actually be helpful. In a desert, shade is your best friend. A patch of cloud cover can lower the temperature just enough to make a brutal hike manageable. If you've been baking in direct sun all day, those clouds aren't a threat. They're a break. But if you're stuck in this clouds equal storm mindset, you might go into panic mode for no reason, start prepping for rain that never shows, or worse, start walking at the wrong time of day just because you misread the sky. Even more dangerous, sometimes people assume the opposite, that no clouds equal everything's fine. But a lot of weather doesn't give you visual warnings. Flash floods can happen under blue skies if there's been rain upstream. Lightning can strike miles ahead of a storm front that hasn't even arrived yet. So banking your decisions solely on cloud cover is like trying to drive with only half your windshield. You might get lucky, or you might end up completely blindsided. Now, don't get me wrong. Reading the sky is a valuable skill. Old school survivalists swear by it. But it's more than just clouds equal bad. You've got to look at patterns. Is the wind changing? Or the clouds building upward or spreading flat? Are birds acting differently? Is the air getting humid or sticky? That's how you really get ahead of the weather, not by assuming that every gray patch is the beginning of a thunderstorm apocalypse. So next time you're out there and you see a bunch of clouds overhead, don't freak out. Don't build a bunker because the sky looks moody. Take a breath. Use your brain, not just your instincts. The weather's complicated, and if you treat every cloud like a threat, you're going to waste energy, miss opportunities, and possibly put yourself in worse conditions by overreacting. Survival's about smart decisions, not knee-jerk reactions. And clouds? They're just part of the background. Not every one of them is out to get you.
You'll hear the sound of a flash flood before it hits. So you're walking through a canyon. It's quiet, peaceful. You're surrounded by tall rock walls, maybe taking pictures, maybe looking for a cool spot to rest. And yeah, you know flash floods can happen in places like this. But hey, you'll be fine, right? You definitely hear a roaring wall of water coming from miles away, giving you time to react. That's how it works in the movies. Big rumble, massive wave, dramatic sprint to safety. The problem is, in real life, that noise, that warning sound you're counting on, it might never come. This myth that a flash flood announces itself with a terrifying sound before it arrives is one of the most dangerous survival misunderstandings out there. It gives people a false sense of security, makes them linger in high-risk areas because everything seems quiet. But that's exactly what makes flash floods so lethal. They often hit with no warning at all. No thunderous roar, no building crescendo. Sometimes, just the sound of a few pebbles rolling, maybe a sudden change in wind. Then boom, water. Here's what people don't realize. Flash floods often start from rainfall that's not even happening where you are. It could be raining heavily 10 miles away, upstream, and that water has to go somewhere. So it funnels through dry creeks, narrow canyons, low-lying areas. You might be sitting in bright sunshine, blue skies above, not a drop of rain around, and still be in serious danger. That water doesn't care what your weather looks like, it's coming anyway. And the first sign of a flash flood? A trickle. A tiny, fast-moving flow of muddy water. Sometimes it's just a small wave a few inches high, rushing through. Looks harmless, almost playful. But behind it, an unstoppable surge. Logs, rocks, boulders, sand, moving at insane speeds, all pushed by water that's not clear and sparkly, but thick like chocolate milk. You don't outrun it. You don't see it coming from far away. And yeah, you usually don't hear it until it's already too close. What's worse is that sound doesn't travel in the way you think, in deep canyons or twisty terrain. The narrow walls actually muffle distant noise. That iconic rumble people expect might be bouncing around, echoing or totally blocked by the shape of the land. By the time you hear anything resembling rushing water, it might be seconds away from sweeping you off your feet. If you're waiting for a sound cue before you react, you're waiting too long. Now, in some extreme cases, flash floods do sound like a freight train when they're close. A deep, mechanical growl, especially if it's carrying debris. But again, that's when it's almost on top of you. That's not a warning. That's your oh no moment. By the time you hear that, you're scrambling for high ground with barely any time to think. And if you're not near a quick escape path, you're in serious trouble. The real red flags to watch for are sudden changes in wind, a quick drop in temperature, the sound of falling rocks or sticks being carried by early water, rising humidity, clouds building up way in the distance. If you're in a canyon and notice dry leaves or sticks starting to shift on the ground, or the air suddenly smells different, earthy, wet, like damp dirt, that's your clue. Get out. Now. Here's the thing. This myth that a flash flood announces itself with a terrifying sound before it arrives is deadly because it feels logical. We've been conditioned by disaster movies and cartoons to think danger always gives us a heads up. But nature doesn't care about your expectations.
Flash floods are sneaky. They're quiet until they're not. And by then, the water is already moving faster than you can run. And don't assume size equals safety. People think, well, I'm in a wide wash. There's space. I'll hear or see it soon. Nope. That wide space turns into a fast-moving river channel. And when that momentum builds, it's like trying to outrun a freight train made of mud and logs. Also, depth is deceptive. It takes to 6 inches of fast-moving water to knock a person off their feet, and only 2 feet to sweep a car away. Imagine what it can do if you're caught standing in its path with 0 time to react. So here's what actually saves lives. Never relying on your ears. Trust the terrain, trust the forecast, trust your instincts. If there's rain anywhere nearby or upstream, even if you don't see it or hear it, you leave the canyon. You get to higher ground. Don't wait for drama. Don't assume silence means safety. And definitely don't hang around thinking, well, I don't hear anything yet, so I'm good. Flash floods are terrifying not because they roar like monsters, but because they creep up like ghosts. Quiet, fast, unforgiving. If you're out in nature, especially in desert or canyon areas, you can't afford to wait for a sound to warn you. You have to think ahead, move early, stay alive.